Adrian N. Breitfelder, City Clerk, you are hereby directed to call a regular session of the City Council to be held on Monday, December 15th, 2025, at 6:30 p.m. in the historic Federal Building for the purpose of conducting such business that may properly come before the City Council.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to a regular session of the Dubuque City Council for December 15th, 2025. As a reminder to our participants, you can provide in-person input or virtual audio and written input during the sections of the agenda where public input is accepted. Input options during the live meeting include in-person attendees may approach the podium when the mayor asks if there is any public input on the item they would like to speak to. Remote attendees can log into GoToMeeting using the login links, phone numbers, and access code that appear on the broadcast and live stream and posted on the front page of the meeting agenda. This option includes audio input and written chat input. If you are participating via computer, indicate which item you'd like to speak to in the chat function or note that you would like to speak during the appropriate section. If you are participating via phone, indicate which item you'd like to speak to during the appropriate section. All comments, whether in person or virtual, must be accompanied by a name and address. Additionally, written public input is accepted by contacting the City Council directly from the city's webpage at www.cityofdubuque.org/councilcontacts and through the City Clerk's office email at ctyclerk@cityofdubuque.org. This information will be reiterated during the meeting. Attendance for the session is as follows. Mayor Kavanaugh.
Here.
Council members Farber.
Here.
Jones.
Here.
Resnick.
Here.
Sprank.
Here.
Wethel.
Here.
City Manager Van Milligan.
Here.
And City Attorney Brumwell.
Here.
Thank you. Mayor Kavanaugh, I will turn it over to you for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Thank you, Adrian. I invite all who are able to please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our first presentation this evening is recognition of Iowa DOT District 6 Engineer Jim Schnoblin.
Good evening. Assistant City Engineer Bob Chisel. It is my sincere privilege to have this opportunity tonight to recognize Iowa Department of Transportation District 6 Engineer Jim Schneblin, who will retire at the end of the year following 25 years of distinguished public service. Jim has served as the District 6 Engineer since 2007, providing leadership and oversight to 12 counties in eastern Iowa, including the metropolitan areas of Dubuque, Clinton, the Quad Cities, Iowa City, and Coralville. Throughout his tenure, Jim was instrumental in advocating for and securing over $200 million in state and federal infrastructure funding to support and invest in the city of Dubuque and the surrounding communities. Through Jim's leadership and collaboration, the city of Dubuque was successful in completing the Southwest Arterial Project, state of good repair projects including improvements to the Northwest Arterial, Central Avenue and the White Street corridors, the Dubuque Streets ITS technology project, and multiple trail improvement projects enhancing pedestrian and bicycle mobility in our community. Additional notable local transportation projects during his tenure included the US 20 Swift Valley Interchange Project, Iowa 3 improvements from Luxembourg to Dubuque, US 20 corridor and safety improvements, and advocating for the replacement of the US 20 Julian Dubuque Bridge. Jim has always looked out for the city of Dubuque. Jim, you've always had our back, and we will always be grateful for your support and contribution to our community. I'm honored to call you a colleague and a friend. On behalf of the City Council, city staff, residents of Dubuque, I present this proclamation to you, which proclaims today, the 15th day of December 2025, as Jim Schnublin Appreciation Day. Thank you, Jim.
I'm very honored. Thank you very much. It certainly has been my honor and privilege to be the district engineer for this part of the state, including working with the city of Dubuque. As I'm sure you're well aware, city staff here is incredibly professional and dedicated, and working with the local officials and city staff over the years who have made huge contributions to making this city safer, more accessible, and really a truly more desirable place to work and live. And perhaps more importantly for me, I really enjoyed my working relationship with the city of Dubuque. We've had fun and got a lot done. And again, thank you very much, and best for all of you. Thank you.
Well, Jim, let me just say on behalf of the city council here and the city staff and really the entire city of Dubuque, thank you so much for your service and for everything you've done. You have a pretty legendary resume. I mean, that is very impressive. And, you know, every once in a while you get to meet someone who pretty much has a fingerprint on every single part of the city that we know and love and live in. And you're one of those people. So Jim, thank you very much for everything that you've done. And I asked you before the meeting what retirement was going to look like, and it sounds like you're actually going to retire. Like, it's just going to be retirement. So congratulations. I'm glad to hear that, and we wish you the very best. But thank you very much for everything.
Our second presentation is recognition of outgoing council members Susan Farber and Rick Jones.
All right, so we have reached the moment of our final meeting in 2025, which at some points didn't feel like we were ever going to get to the final meeting in 2025. We just kept scheduling more meetings, or at least Mike did. So I thought, you know, tonight we'd get this opportunity, first of all, for each of us to say a word of thanks who are here. And I should let everybody know, Laura Roussel would love to be here. She's unable to this evening, so she feels very badly about it. It's actually the first meeting that Laura Roussel has missed as a city council member. So we'll know that she's in here with us in spirit tonight. But I thought maybe what we could do is, I was thinking it'd be fitting if we start at this end of the desk, and we're gonna honor you first, Susan. And start at this end of the desk and come down this way, and then Susan, you'll get an opportunity to say a few words, and then same for Rick on the other side. We'll come back this direction if that works for everybody else. So if we, Mr. Resnick.
All right, I'd
let you
be
kick it
honored
off.
to start this. First of all, I want to say that both of these fine people are consequential. That's what I hear. That's what I think of first when I think of Susan Farber and Rick Jones, is consequential, high-impact team members. They're always about Team Dubuque when they're here. So I think it's fantastic. Now, as far as Susan is concerned, Susan has always had the drive, as far as I know, to be successful. She's talking about her the wonderful things she did, even as a tennis player in the senior high school. Was that champion that year? Mm-hmm. Yeah. So even back then, she was extremely driven to be successful. And as a Dubuque City Council member, her success has been our success. So thank you, Susan, for sharing that drive with the people of Dubuque. And we'll see you at Magoo's.
Definitely.
Thank you. Well, Susan, I remember when you first came on board, when you were running for office, and how we got to know each other then, because I just wanted to learn all about you. And I know we've bonded greatly over your appreciation of art. I know I don't have the depth that you have, but you have wonderful taste in art. And thank you for always inviting us into your home. And I'm going to be missing working with you because you are very organized, definitely driven, and you brought us a wealth of knowledge that was very helpful in certain situations. But I'll definitely be seeing you when you're on the food truck, because I know that's when I ran into you the most outside of here. So.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
I'm surprised you didn't actually drive the food truck in here at
Well, we
some
had thought
point.
about it.
Yeah, I'm sure you did.
You know,
Yeah.
and Bernie's in the audience. my
Yes,
husband.
yeah.
He had thought about it too.
We're happy Bernie made it tonight, too. Well, you know, Susan, I remember when you first called me to say that you were considering a run for city council. And when you said consider, I was like, oh, you know, Susan's definitely running. If she's considering something, it's going to happen. And I thought to myself, wow, that's perfect. That's really fitting. That actually works exactly like I think it would. And I have to tell you, I've been incredibly impressed with the work that you've been able to do. You know, one of the things that has surprised me a little bit about my role is the amount of travel that it is required at times for the city of Dubuque. And one of the things that I've traveled with every single one of you at some point or another, but Susan and I were the ones who were kind of traveling the most together. And it was because you became so involved at the National League of Cities. You became involved with the FCC. You have served this community in countless ways. And I think that, I hope that people recognize all that required of you. Somebody who seems to work 170 hours a week, from what I can tell, with all the work that you do outside of here. But I've been, I think, inspired by the ability of you to just keep on going through all of it, through thick and thin, and for the city. So thank you so much for the service that you've provided here.
My pleasure. Thank you for the comment.
I just, when I started on council, it really quickly occurred to me how every person brings something very unique. Their stage in life, their professional background, their personal passions. And for Susan, she brings an exceptional human being to the table. The city of Dubuque and our residents are so incredibly lucky to have you up here and do the work that you have done. Your experience professionally, your knowledge of the community personally, your global experience, and what you have brought to the National League of Cities and then brought back to us. I think it's put Dubuque on the map, but it's also opened a lot of doors for us as an organization in city government. So I can't thank you enough.
Thank you.
Well, how often do you get to work with a global leader in communications and data management and business expertise? We've gotten to for the last 4 years plus, and that's been a great thing. Susan helped me find my way with a couple of issues that really were impacting businesses, the truck routes on Central Avenue being one where I was coming at it from a bad direction, and she got me straightened out, and I much appreciate that. Your intellect and your achievement is beyond reproach. She was a tennis player who excelled in high school because that's all there was. Girls couldn't do much else. You could be a cheerleader, or you could play tennis. If you played tennis, you had a male coach who wasn't really a tennis guy, if I remember it right. But she excelled at it anyway, and every other thing that she's done. So we're lucky enough to have this wonderful family business of Magoo's that not only feeds us, but follows us around to feed us some more, which is really, really nice. But her national significance to the Federal Communications Commission and the National League of Cities will not soon be replicated. Thank you very much. It's a joy to have you as a friend.
Well, thank you. And as the most senior member here amongst us tonight, I wanted to take a little bit of time to share some remarks. And first off, I'd like to thank you to Mr. Resnick and his ensemble for the musical tribute and holiday cheer. What an impressive way to welcome the last city council meeting of the year. So thank you very much. And to my colleagues, again, for your generous remarks about my service here to the Dubuque community. As we know, it's an honor and a privilege to hold this office. But most importantly, I have a few special remarks to share tonight about my sincere thank you to the Dubuque residents who are not only here tonight in the chambers, but to those listening from the comfort of their homes who made my service possible. So here's my remarks to everybody here. As I reflect upon the last 5 years serving as Ward 1 council member, the best part of this role has been crossing paths with so many of you, whether during a household visit, at a community event, through emails, phone calls, or even right here in the council chambers. I am grateful for this experience and to have had this opportunity to work hard as your advocate. Thanks to you, I have learned time and again The city's best assets are its people. Your involvement, questions, and ideas surrounding city projects have helped make a difference within our community. It has been my distinct pleasure to give back to my hometown and contribute to our shared progress. Serving on the City Council has been remarkable. I sincerely appreciate the trust and the unwavering support extended to me. Throughout my term, I have enjoyed working on many projects and initiatives, including advancing public-private partnerships. This business and nonprofit collaboration has spurred infilled housing, commercial and industrial expansion, new childcare facilities, and innovative cultural and tourism amenities. Also, revitalizing the downtown corridors, focusing on the preservation of Dubuque's historical fabric, has successfully generated contemporary, walkable neighborhoods. This meets the demand for convenient, integrated lifestyles where employees can live, work, and play. And, as mentioned, safeguarding the city's information technology infrastructure, ensuring we all sleep better at night. What a proud moment for the city. The new data center spotlights the fact Dubuque is becoming a model city of innovation, generating best practices and efficient AI smart applications. Drawing upon my business background and technology expertise, it has been an honor to represent Dubuque locally, as well as nationally, serving roles within the FCC and the National League of Cities. This work has shaped federal and municipal policy rooted in AI, cybersecurity, data center build-out, and other emerging technology infrastructure. I would also like to express my deepest gratitude to our dedicated and essential city staff and employees. Your collective commitment to the public service is truly monumental, and your unwavering dedication does not go unnoticed. Thank you for your expertise and for making our city the masterpiece on the Mississippi. I would also like to express my gratitude to my colleagues sitting here tonight. I am grateful for the heart, vision, and steady leadership you have all brought to Dubuque. While challenges remain, including those tied to budget and resource management, I am grateful for the respectful and thoughtful deliberations held within this hallowed chamber. As a proud Dubuquer, I look forward to continuing my participation on several local and national boards and committees. My commitment to team up to help achieve major goals for our community's development remains a strong priority. Once again, and as always, my heartfelt thanks and sincere regard for the trust placed in me and for supporting me as your City Council member. It has been a true honor to work with so many dedicated people from across the community. Together, we have made a real impact. In your service, I remain beyond grateful. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Back at you.
Well, thank you so much, Susan.
Well, thank you.
We still have a meeting after this, so we still get to work with you for a little while longer, but yeah. Well, time to honor Rick. I thought we'd start with you, Katie, if that works out okay, and then we'll give David the last word on this one.
Well, I have not worked with you as long as the other members of council, but I have been so incredibly impressed in your institutional knowledge of the city of Dubuque. Decisions that have been made in our city for decades, Rick doesn't forget. In fact, he knows the details. God bless you. He knows the details at a level that I can't even believe a human being can remember. And he does it with grace and kindness in his heart. I'm grateful for you. Thank you, Rick.
Rick, you're a drummer. That's pretty much all I have to say. That's the greatest thing about you. No. It's funny because the fact that we share that that hobby, that love, is something that I know drew us together right away when we first met. But at the same time, I was going to say kind of some of the same things that Katie just said. I've just been impressed every single time that you start talking about things that happened back when you were first running for council, back when you were on the council years ago. It has been so incredibly helpful to have that level of knowledge here at this desk. And I know for me, this is 6 years that I've served here in this role, or on the city council, and then here as mayor. I am just so thankful to have somebody that has served in the time that you've spent doing it. You've taught me a great deal, more than I'll ever be able to fully tell you about. But I know you recognize a lot of that too. You can see that. I talked about fingerprints earlier, and yours are everywhere as well because you've done so much work, and I've really appreciated that. You've welcomed me from the start. You've taught me a great deal. You've been patient with me. You've told me when I've screwed up, and I appreciate that very much. So thank you for everything that you've done to serve, and I look forward to being able to continue to hang out, and one of these days we'll have to actually have a drum off together. That'll be a good time. I'll lose that, by the way, but I'd love to do it.
Well, Rick, I like to, when I think of why I got involved in the city and why I followed city politics, I get to think all back to your initial election in '05 with you, and of course, then Roy Buell running for mayor, and the issue of helping our folks, particularly my demographic, feel safe and welcomed in our community. And from then on, I would continue to follow city politics. And just get involved, and then eventually we would become friends from other friends that were involved in the city, and then I decided to do this lovely endeavor in my life, and it's been a wonderful time working with you, and I'll definitely miss you, but I'll still reach out and ask for your opinion on some things, so thanks.
Okay, Rick, it's my turn. And of course, you can be appreciative of the fact I wrote you an ode. So here we go. So, Ode to Rick Jones, December 15th, 2025. 51 years ago, a storied history of public service begins by a gentleman whose heart and commitment looms large within. A graduate of Dubuque Senior in the good old days, then on to UD, its theater arts and plays. Leading the Upper Main Street Jazz Band was Rick's next passion. An accomplished musician and drummer, yes, swing was the fashion. In 1974, Rick found his true métier, becoming a first responder, saving lives every day. Proud medic for Dubuque's Fire Brigade, evolving EMS and neighborhood aid. 31 years of dedication, safeguarding public safety, preventing harm. Under Rick's unmatched tutelage, no need for alarm. Retiring in 2005, Rick's community service didn't pause. Elected city council member at large, savvy maven of municipal law. An outstanding 20-year legacy, many honors and milestones to note, innumerable committee appointments and civic involvement, happy to promote. From DMATS to the landfill agency to ECIA, from travel to Dubuque to our own DRA. Add the Special Olympics, Kiwanis Club, chamber ribbon cutting galore, Rick's contributions, keen insights, astute guidance, cheerleading, and much more. From Des Moines to DC, Rick's reputation is well known. A staunch advocate for shovel-ready projects, always homegrown. Ongoing relationships developed over the years with trusted partners cranking up the gears. Renowned master of all things city council, feel free to ask. Our seasoned professor, AKA sage historian, always ready for this task. With knowledgeable answers, city proceedings to recount, comparing past to present rulings, different pathways to surmount. As Rick leaves his post, we share a celebratory toast to his special achievements, his dedication, his good spirits, and most for being a great colleague, a fun, admirable chap. With gratitude, Rick, I doff my cap.
Well, Rick, now you've heard some of the things that he's done. That's probably maybe a third of the things that Rick has done because he's just, and that's a huge, wonderful list. But Rick has always had the drive to help others. In his, you should check out his resume. That's part of it. 50 years of outstanding service to the people of Dubuque. And with Rick, once a friend, always a friend. I have been personally blessed with his friendship for 40 years. And we've performed together at hundreds of musical events. And it was his example of dedication to our community that inspired me to run for council 18 years ago. Thank you, my friend.
No, do I have to top all that?
Yeah, you gotta try.
I feel bad that I didn't have an ode for Susan. Well, working alongside of each of you has been wonderfully amazing. I'll miss this team beyond words. Each of you brings the highest level of caring, concern, integrity, passion, honesty, and a sincere desire to make Dubuque the very best it can be for everyone. You all come to the table well-read and well-prepared. As I leave the city council, I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you to consider a few issues I've been working on in the background and won't be in a position to complete. I'm glad we're on the path to gain accreditation from nationally recognized entities for our applicable city departments. I urge you to keep after that. It matters. Air service remains important, as does all connectivity. Passenger rail should still be pursued. And we mustn't forget about intercity bus service. I'm just learning that we're in some new distress there, having recently lost the Trailways connection. And that leaves us almost with no way to get here other than walking if you're not able to drive a car or borrow a car or lease a car. I'm hearing from a lot of my South End neighbors that the deer population's out of control. I'm seeing this in front of my house as well. With high concentrations of urban deer come high concentrations of deer ticks, and exposure of humans to Lyme disease. A couple of ordinance changes could help. We recently made it illegal to feed bears in the city. We need to do that for all wildlife. It draws them into the community, exacerbates their problem, and puts them in harm's way. Secondly, we should empower the city manager to waive the requirement for the minimum size of a lot for bow and arrow harvesting of deer for specific properties with serious issues. I totally love our approach to the unhoused citizens of Dubuque, offering support services and not incarceration. I think that's the right thing to do. And I do respect that panhandling has been interpreted as protected speech by the courts. However, we've got a number of individuals who have taken to our highway medians to panhandle, and I believe that this puts them and the motoring public in immediate danger. Not only could that individual lose their life, but the poor person that strikes them will have their life changed forever. We've got to fix that. We need to outlaw the practice before we lose a life. I certainly hope that we can use opportunity instead of prosecution to achieve it, but we got to get the folks off the medians. It's bad for everybody. Finally, I urge you to help the newly elected members find their way. They were elected by decent margins and were supported by some loud but uninformed folks that think there's a lot wrong with this city. Please give our new councilmen the benefit of the doubt as they learn firsthand that your city staff is in fact ethical, honest, and working every hour of every day to fulfill the goals and direction of the city council. Whatever brought them here, I believe that Chris Staver and Tyson Leindecker are decent, well-meaning people that will work very hard as I did, to move this city forward. Remember, too, that we're not perfect, and there is usually room for improvement in process, communication, and policy. I know all of our team members reach for perfect every day. The quest continues. But we all know that if you think you've arrived, you haven't. You're going to fall backwards as soon as you stop moving forward. I'd sum up my time on the city council with a quote from one of my political heroes, former Minnesota Senator and Vice President of the United States, Walter Mondale. We served the people, we obeyed the law, and we told the truth. God bless you all.
All right, well, I guess we'll get some work done now.
We'll move on to proclamations. Our proclamation this evening is Veterans Appreciation Month.
All right, well, we have several people here to accept this proclamation. The names I have are Beth Fleming, Randy Rennison, Terry Lewis, and Bob Schemmel, and I think Ann Friends. So if you'd like to come on up, you can say a few words and be able to accept this proclamation.
Hi, we are from the Veterans Freedom Center and the Women Warriors. And we'd like to thank each and every one of you for considering respecting us the month of December. At the Veterans Freedom Center, we are all unpaid volunteers. We were able to have 2 honor flights in Dubuque with just our can donations. Your can donations keep us going. We are able to buy veterans air conditioners in the summer. We are able to help them when they are down on their luck. And this year we have more veterans in need than we've ever had prior. And so everything that the residents of Dubuque do for us is greatly appreciated. And sadly, this weekend we lost 2 members of the Iowa National Guard in Syria. I am a Desert Storm veteran. I know firsthand what it's like to lose someone you love overseas. And so I would hope that we remember those families that are suffering greatly this evening. It absolutely breaks our heart. And we are so grateful to the city of Dubuque. We are so grateful for all the kindness of each and every citizen. You make a huge difference in the lives of veterans. And there is no better city in the United States that takes care of their veterans like the city of Dubuque. And we humbly want to say thank you. And Dawn, you're next.
So my name is Dawn Fleming. I am the Board Vice President of Tri-State Women Warriors. We met earlier this year for Women's Veterans Recognition Month. And again, we want to thank you for continuing to recognize our veterans in our tri-state area. I am an Iowa National Guard veteran who deployed to Afghanistan, who knows the feeling that our families and our veterans overseas are feeling, because I was overseas when we lost one of our own in the 133rd Infantry. So your continued support organizations that begin with grassroots, whether it's our Veterans Freedom Center, Tri-State Women Warriors, our Dubuque County Veterans, and also Up and Rising, our Veterans Networking Night. It's greatly appreciated, and we can't say thank you enough.
So thank you again. We really appreciate the recognition. Thank you very much.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, thank you so much for being here. And, you know, you've mentioned just the growing network that you have and the growing population of people that you're able to serve at the Veterans Freedom Center and the fairly new Tri-State Women Warriors, actually. And I've been impressed by the growing numbers. And what it says is that people feel a sense of belonging there, and I'm glad to see that. So thank you very much for what you've done. I do think that we need to take a moment because we need to honor the 2 who were lost in Syria this week. It was Sergeant Edgar Brian Torres Tovar and Sergeant William Nathaniel Howard, 2 young men who were there serving our country. So if we could, I'd appreciate it if we could all just take a moment of silence, please. Thank you all. Thank you again for your service, and thanks a lot for being here and putting this proclamation forward tonight. We really appreciate it. Well, City of Dubuque proclamation. Whereas the service and sacrifice of soldiers and veterans are among the greatest contributions to our nation, and the hardships many have endured deserve our deepest recognition and continued commitment to justice and care. And whereas Dubuque and the surrounding area have veteran organizations for the Army, Marines, Navy, Air Force, Space Force, and Coast Guard. And whereas appreciation for veterans from our community is welcome and deserved and should be shown to them every day of the year. Now, therefore, I, Brad M. Kavanaugh, Mayor of the City of Dubuque, Iowa, on behalf of the City Council staff and residents of Dubuque, do hereby proclaim the month of December 2025 as Veterans Appreciation Month in the City of Dubuque, Iowa, and call upon the people of the Dubuque area to recognize our nation's most heroic military veterans every December. All right, Adrian.
We'll move on to consent items. At this time, anyone participating in the meeting in person who would like to discuss one of the consent items, please approach the podium when the mayor asks if there is any in-person input and state your name and address. For all remote attendees, please enter your name and address in the chat function or state your name and address over the phone when the mayor asks if there is any virtual input. If more than one participant would like to speak, then city staff will determine the speaking order of the participants. Please state the item you'd like removed from the consent agenda for separate discussion and consideration. And consent items can be found on pages 2 through 6 of the agenda.
All right, thank you, Adrian. Do we have anyone here in chambers who would like to remove any of the consent items for separate discussion this evening? Seeing no one here, do we have anyone virtually? All right.
No input.
Okay, back then to us.
Mr. Mayor,
Ms. Farber.
I would like to set aside item number 25 for a separate discussion.
Number 25, thank you. Any others?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, Mr. Resident.
I move to receive and file the documents, adopt the resolutions, and deal with the consent items as recommended, except for number 25.
Second by Farber.
I've got a motion by Resnick, second by Farber. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprague.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
That motion passes 6-0. We are on then to number 25. If I could get a motion, please, to get it on the table. Mr. Jones?
Which receive and file and adopt number 25.
May I ask, Mr. Mayor?
Are you going to abstain?
Yes, I need
Yeah,
to
I think
abstain.
you'll
That's
get the
why.
opportunity after we have a second to the motion,
Thank you.
right? Yeah, so we've got a motion from Jones, second from Mr. Sprank. And sorry for assuming, but I kind of guessed what you were doing there. So please, Ms. Farber.
Yes, thank you. I am recusing myself from this vote due to the fact that Magoo's Pizza is actually listed here as one of the organizations that will receive a license. Thank you.
How fitting for your last meeting. Yeah, perfect.
Yeah,
All
how
right.
fitting.
All right, so we have a motion by Jones, second by Sprank. So Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprague.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
That motion passes 5 ayes and 1 abstention.
Next are items set for public hearing. We have 6. First is setting a public hearing to dispose of city-owned property north of Cedar Crest Court in Dubuque, Iowa for January 5th, 2026. Second, Tanglewood Court Storm Sewer Extension Project, setting a public hearing and initiate public bidding process for January 5th, 2026. Third, setting a public hearing to approve the subordination agreement for properties located at 675 and 677 West 3rd Street for January 5th, 2026. Fourth is Grand Harbor Hotel Assignment of Development Agreement for January 5th, 2026. Fifth is Grand Harbor Hotel Assignment of Lease Agreement for January 5th, 2026. And sixth is resolution setting a public hearing on a proposed development agreement by and between the City of Dubuque, Iowa, GT Novelty Condos LLC, providing for the issuance of urban renewal tax increment revenue grant obligations pursuant to the development agreement for January 5th, 2026.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Sprank.
I motion that we receive and file, adopt the resolutions, and set the public hearing for January 5th, 2026.
Second by Wethel.
Okay, a motion by Sprank, second by Wethel to set the public hearings. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprague.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones. Resnick.
Aye.
That motion passes 6-0.
We'll move on to boards and commissions. We have appointments for the Arts and Cultural Affairs Advisory Commission, Resilient Community Advisory Commission, and Zoning Board of Adjustment.
All right, thank you, Adrian. Well, we have the great challenge here in our first one for the Arts and Cultural Affairs Advisory Commission of having 7 applicants for 1 position. So I believe we have, Krenna, is essentially, we can kind of do a matrix, and what we'll do is we'll do a roll call, and we'll see who gets the most votes, and from there, we need to whittle it down to the person that gets the majority vote to be able to be on the advisory commission. Does that make sense to everybody? It may take us a few rounds. Did I say that right, Krenna? Anything
You did.
would add?
Yep,
Okay.
you captured it.
All right. So if you would, please, Adrian, call the roll, and we can each name an applicant for the Arts and Cultural Affairs Advisory Commission opening.
Sprague.
Ryan Ahrens, or Ahrens?
Kavanaugh.
Addison Aronson.
Farber.
Aaron Martin.
Wethel.
Addison Aronson.
Jones.
Aaron Martin.
Resnick.
Addison Aronson.
All right, so by my count, I've got 3 votes for Addison Aronson and 2 for Aaron Martin. So now we need to do this one more time to be able to come to a conclusion between those 2 candidates. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So Adrian, if you could call the roll, please.
Sprank,
Addison Aronson.
Kavanaugh,
Addison Aronson.
Farber,
Aaron Martin.
Wethel,
Addison Aronson.
Jones,
Aaron Martin.
Resnick,
Addison Aronson.
All right, so this time we have 4 votes for Addison Aronson, 2 for Aaron Martin. So Addison Aronson is appointed to the 3-year term through June 30th, 2027 on the Arts and Cultural Affairs Advisory Commission. Let me just, before we move on to the Resilient Community Advisory Commission, say thank you to everybody who's putting their name in the hat for this. Continue to do so. We sincerely appreciate having so many people who are willing to step up and serve on these commissions and boards that we have in the city. And there's particular interest in the Arts and Cultural Affairs Advisory Commission right now, and we really appreciate that. So please keep coming forward. If your name wasn't chosen this evening, we do appreciate your desire to serve and want to continue to see your name here. So thank you for that. Next up, we have the Resilient Community Advisory Commission. We have 1 3-year term through July 1st, 2028, and 1 applicant, a Lucas Delaney. So here I will entertain a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Sprank.
I recommend that we appoint Lucas Delaney.
Second.
Got a motion by Sprank and a second by Jones. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Aye.
Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Farber,
Aye.
Wethel,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Resnick,
Aye.
That motion passes 6-0. Lucas Delaney is appointed to the Resilient Community Advisory Commission through 2028. Finally, we have the Zoning Board of Adjustment, 1 5-year term through March 25th, 2026, and 1 applicant, Ben Leffelholtz. I will entertain a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move that Ben Leffelholtz be appointed to the term on the Zoning Board of Adjustment.
Second.
Got a motion by Jones and a second by Farber. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank,
Aye.
Kavanaugh,
Aye.
Farber,
Aye.
Wethel,
Aye.
Jones,
Aye.
Resnick,
Aye.
That motion passes 6-0. Ben Leffelholtz is appointed to the Zoning Board of Adjustment through 2026.
We'll move on to public hearings. At this time, anyone participating in the meeting in person who would like to discuss one of the public hearing items, please approach the podium when the mayor asks if there is any in-person input for the public hearing you'd like to speak to, and state your name and address. For all remote attendees, please enter your name and address in the chat function and state your question, or state your name and address over the phone when the mayor asks if there's any virtual input for the public hearing you would like to speak to. If more than one participant would like to speak, then city staff will determine the speaking order of the participants. Public hearing number 1 is request to rezone 514 and 518 East 22nd Street.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Sprank.
I motion that we receive and file, and I move that the requirement that a proposed ordinance be considered and voted on for the passage at 2 city council meetings prior to the meeting at which it is to be finally passed be suspended.
Second by Wethel.
Got a motion by Sprank and a second by Wethel. Wally, please.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and City Council. The request before you tonight is to rezone properties located at 514 and 518 East 22nd Street from R2A alternate 2-family residential to R3 moderate density multifamily residential. This change will bring property, a non-conforming existing triplex located at 518 East 22nd Street into zoning compliance, and allow the addition of a 3rd unit to the unfinished attic space of 514 East 22nd Street. Both properties are ready to be developed, and meet the Unified Development Code requirements for lot area and off-street parking. Each size provide 5 paved off-street parking spaces and exceed that minimum 6,000 square feet of lot area requirement. The surrounding neighborhood has significantly evolved, particularly with the development of the B Branch Creek Parkway and recreational trail amenities. The proposed rezoning aligns with the comprehensive plan goals to promote diverse housing options, support multifamily development near employment centers, and enhance the walkability and connectivity to open spaces and trails. The future land use map has identified this area as multifamily, which further supports the request. And staff has perceived that the addition of 1 dwelling unit will not increase the required amount of traffic through the area, especially with the Iowa DOT counts and everything that's associated with it. The city's Inspection and Construction Services Division will review the attic conversion to ensure compliance with building codes. And by a vote of 7-0, the Zoning Advisory Commission recommends that the City Council approve the request as submitted, and a simple majority vote is needed for City Council approval.
All right, thank you, Wally. Well, we are in a public hearing to consider a request from Jacob Coldhouse to rezone property located at 514 and 518 East 22nd Street from R2A alternate two-family residential to R3 moderate density multifamily residential. Do we have anyone here in the chambers to address us on this item? Seeing no one here. Anyone virtually? Thank you.
No input.
And no input. All right. Back to us then for any discussion. Yeah, Mr. Spring.
Wally, I have a simple question for you. I'm assuming that we have to change from the R2A to the R3 because of they're adding another unit. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. It's twofold. One, there's an existing legal non-conforming triplex. So on that property in an R2A district, currently only single-family and duplexes are allowed. So that would bring that property into conformity. And then the other thing is because they want to add that additional unit is what's really triggering, like you were indicating, because in order to do so, they have to have an R3 zone, which would allow up to 3 units. And then we look at lot coverage, lot density, and associated with it. So yeah, so the really triggering thing here is that additional unit adding to the 1 unit, but we decided to take both properties through to bring it all in compliance at once.
Wonderful. So I know this is kind of a second, it's affiliated, but not exactly affiliated. So this is, we're working on kind of fixing all of our unified codes. This would be an example of why we want to fix our unified codes from just to simplify the issue. Is that kind of?
Yeah, correct. With the Unified Development Code, as we move forward through that, one of the things that have been identified is infill development, increased density, encourage these redevelopment of lots, and specifically those areas that have, the walkable nature of this located along the B branch. The need for housing, we've had multiple housing studies that basically says we need housing, we need more housing. How do we go about doing that and trying to be a little more flexible and create that density through Unified Development Code is a good example of what you brought up.
Okay, that's all I needed. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or discussion on this one? Seeing and hearing none. Okay. Motion here is to receive and file and waive the 3 readings. So Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprink.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
That motion passes 6-0.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Spring.
I move final consideration and passage of the ordinance.
Second by Wethel.
Motion by Sprank, second by Wethel. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprink.
Aye.
Kavanaugh. Farber.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
That motion passes 6-0.
Public hearing number 2 is request to rezone 2900 block of Davenport Street.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
move to receive and file the documents. I further move that the requirement that the proposed ordinance be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to the meeting at which it is to be finally passed be suspended.
Second by Spring.
Motion by Jones and a second by Sprank. Wally again, please.
Yes, good evening, Mayor and City Council. Wally Wernmont, Planning Services Director. The request before you tonight is to rezone a portion of the property from AG with conditions, so agriculture with conditions, and R1 single-family residential to an agricultural zoning district. If you can see my screen up there, I think they're trying to turn the big screen, but the side screens, but are you viewing things?
Yeah, we're good.
Okay, you bet.
Yep, this one's coming on.
So this is just showing the vicinity map of the property. The area is hatched in the black and white, shows the 2 properties they're looking at being rezoned. This is located at the former Holy Ghost School's ball field site, which has been actually underneath redevelopment over the years through reevaluation farms with regards to the property. This is once again the subject property. We do notify all properties within 200 feet of the property. So that red boundary is showing that 200-foot notification. So every property owner and that shady yellow received a notice from our office. In addition to that, the property owner and the applicant has reached out to the neighbors, including your packet. You'd see a letter that was provided by the applicant to those neighbors that were addressed. This is the project site. The area outlined in red is the agricultural with conditions, and then the area outlined in orange is the R1 single-family zoning area. There is a driveway that gets down to kind of the parking lot area. These 2 properties are the 2 properties in consideration to be rezoned to agricultural. Once again, the property is currently existing as ag with conditions, and we'll get to those conditions in a little bit, and that parking lot area is zoned R1 single family. This kind of just shows you the breakdown of the existing zoning, kind of the history, and the adjacent property owners around the area. So the conditions that are placed on the ag property is that the animals allowed on the subject property be limited to fowl excluding rat tights. And I remember this was a very long discussion, the Zoning Advisory Commission several years ago. A rat tite is a mostly large flightless birds with a rat tight breastbone, which is ostriches, emus, cassowaries, kiwis. I mean, it was a big, long discussion because they're allowing fowl, and one of the commission members basically said, well, what about ostriches? So then it was a long discussion. So anyway, and then bees, and then a maximum of 5 pygmy goats and aquaponics on the property. So the rezoning, reason for the rezoning request is to allow livestock to graze on and help maintain the parking lot property. So they have goats that they use currently to maintain their property, and in order to graze on that R1 property that currently would not be allowed, this would allow them to graze and clean up the area around the parking lot, but also to remove some of the restrictions and to allow additional agricultural uses on the property, which includes removing the limit on the number of goats and other uses for that ag property before that. It went to the Zoning Advisory Commission. There was a public hearing. There was no public input. We didn't receive any notices or anyone attend the meeting and discuss the request, which I think is a big accomplishment to the applicants who were proactive and reached out to the neighbors ahead of time. They've also been in operation for several years and have maintained the property, and including purchasing a resident adjacent to the property. So not only are they maintaining the property, they actually live right next door to the property. And by a vote of 6-0, the commission recommends the city council approve the request, and it's not without conditions. The request is to approve it to go to straight ag zoning, so that would remove all conditions from the property, which would allow anything to be permitted in an agricultural district except for livestock confinement buildings and feedlots. Those are not allowed in an agricultural district. And due to the size and the scale and nature of the property and the way it's being accessed, it'd be really difficult to run an operation like that. In the future, if they wanted to expand and provide several other buildings on the property, they would be permitted to do so. They would have to go through the development review team process for access and everything associated with it. So once again, by a vote of 6-0, the commission recommends city council approve the request, and a simple majority vote is needed for the city council to approve it. And that's all I have at this time.
Thank you, Wally. We are in a public hearing to consider a request from Sean Shriver to rezone property located at 2900 block of Davenport Street from AGC Agricultural with Conditions and R1 Single Family Residential to AG Agricultural Zoning District. Zoning Advisory Commission is recommending approval. Do we have anyone here to address us on this item?
Good evening. Corinne Shriver and Sean Shriver from 2884 Davenport Street. We just wanted to come make sure there were no questions by any of the city council members for this request. Wally did a really nice job of summarizing everything we were looking for. As he mentioned, we've been operating the property for several years with no issues. The neighbors seem to really enjoy having the property, the goats, there, and the care that's taken care of the property since we've taken possession of it. And we're just looking to be able to add mostly more goats so that we can participate in a rotational grazing project in conjunction with the NRCS to hopefully gather more data for sustainable Iowa agriculture, which is one of our main goals. So happy to answer any questions if there are any.
All right. Well, thank you, Corinne. Thank you, Sean. If we have questions, we'll ask them. We'll have more time for public input if there is any, and then we'll bring it back to us. Oh, please, yeah.
In addition, if I could have your permission just to make a sidebar of recognition to a member of the council?
Sure, yeah.
Mr. Van Milligan, I just want to say thank you, as well as whatever decision you guys come to. But you made a decision recently in our favor of one of our requests. I know that was highly unusual and took a lot of consideration and thought, and you took our perspective into view, and I just want to say thank you very much, because that's going to help us dramatically improve the efficiency and the productivity of our property and our business and crops.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you both. Any other public input on this item? Seeing none here. Anything virtually? All right, thank you.
Input.
And no other written input. Okay, back to us then for, no, yeah, back to us for discussion. Go ahead, Mr. Resnick.
All right, thank you. So, Mr. Wernemont, just a quick note, and we didn't get a recommendation by the Zoning Advisory Commission on here. It says, recommends that the city council zoning, didn't say approve or deny. But I mean, obviously, it's approval.
It's
Just want to point that out. But I also want to point out all the great things that you've done too. That little, don't want to just nick you a little bit, but there are a lot going on as the folks mentioned there. My question to you is, you mentioned fowl. Are we talking roosters as well?
So roosters currently are not allowed in the corporate limits. We do allow chickens and hens and ducks. We do regulate roosters. Actually, our office gets involved. We work with our animal control office, but roosters are currently not permitted in the city due to the crowing, the nature of them. So believe it or not, our zoning enforcement officer does go out and enforce upon them quite regularly, and it happens. I think a lot of times when people purchase chicks, sometimes it's hard to sex them, and sometimes later on they find out it turns into a rooster, and then we get involved with regulating those. So,
Do you think it's necessary to put that in there because it just says fowl? And I would, if I bought some roosters, I'd be disappointed.
yeah. So one of two things. If you were to place that condition on there, we'd have to table the request. We'd have to provide it in writing, and then they would have to agree to the writing to the conditions, and then bring it back before you. I don't think it's necessary because we already enforce roosters from that understanding, and I think the Shrivers are well aware that we don't allow roosters in the city specifically for that as we move forward with it. So.
All right, thank you. I don't think it's necessary to. It's already on the books that, but as long as the folks know that it's not a surprise, and I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Jones.
Just like to say, this is an example of how things work with good neighbors. And I'm well aware that you folks have been great neighbors since you got the property and started working it some years ago. And that leads to nobody showing up at a zoning hearing to fight against you, leads to nobody showing up at a city council meeting to fight against you, and it leads to the community getting behind you and saying, yeah, of course, let's do it. So I'm in that camp as well. Thank you, and good luck.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Mr. Spring.
I'll be supporting this, but I'm looking forward to this exciting new, expansion and adventure in my neighborhood. So it should be fun to see something different going on. So looking forward to it.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm fully supportive of this too. I think it's a great idea, and I love I read about the project, and I'm excited to see that. I think it's a really very interesting project. I do have one question. When is the last time we rezoned something back to ag from the? I don't remember this happening in my time on the council. I'm just wondering if it's very common.
You bet. When we went to agricultural conditions with this property, that was the last time. Was this property?
Really, with this same property?
Yes. Yeah. It's not very often that we rezone property to ag inside of corporate limits, but yeah.
Oh, so that did happen when. That wasn't that long ago, then, was it? Yeah. Never mind. I totally remember that happening when I was here. Yeah. So just know that. No, I guess I was just saying, one of the reasons I asked that question is because I think it's exciting to see this and moving in this direction of kind of what seems like it's going the opposite direction. But I think, we've had multiple discussions about urban farming. And one of the things that's on the Envision 2030 list is having more locally grown food and having the, things that involve urban farming in this way. And I think it's really exciting to see an example of that other people can follow. Because I know the Shrivers I know you're both really involved in that discussion as well with the Envision 2030 group that is working on that. So I think it's great to see this moving in that direction. So thanks, Wally. All right. Well, with that said, motion here is to receive and file and waive the 3 readings. So Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Resnick.
That motion passes 6-0.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move final consideration and passage of the ordinance.
Second.
Got a motion by Jones, second by Sprank. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
That motion passes 6-0.
Public hearing number 3 is resolution approving a development agreement by and between the City of Dubuque, Iowa, and Staver Munch LLC, providing for the issuance of urban renewal tax increment revenue grant obligations pursuant to the development agreement.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move to receive and file and adopt the resolution.
Second by Wethel.
Got a motion by Jones, second by Wethel. Mike, please.
Thank you. Economic Development Director Jill Connors is recommending City Council adopt the attached resolution approving a development agreement by and between the City of Dubuque and Staver Munch LLC, providing for the issuance of urban renewal tax increment revenue grant obligations. Staver Munch LLC submitted an application for a housing creation project at 2275 Central Avenue. The property has been vacant and underutilized for many years. The applicant is proposing a $200,000 project that will create 3 new residential rental units while also stabilizing and updating the building facade. The key elements of the development agreement include the following. Number 1, developer will make a capital investment of approximately $200,000 to rehabilitate the property. Number 2, developer must create 3 residential rental units. Number 3, developer will receive 15 years of tax increment financing incentives in the form of semi-annual rebates. Tax increment financing incentives are estimated not to exceed $50,000. Number 4, city to award a downtown housing incentive grant in an amount of $30,000, which is $10,000 times 3 units. Number 5, City of Dubuque will amend the Greater Downtown Urban Renewal District Plan to accommodate the issuance of tax increment financing incentives. The agreement contains a provision, as we do in all our agreements, requiring acceptance of housing choice vouchers. However, there is a prohibition on this for members of the City Council. So upon Chris Staver being sworn into office, as he is a member of the LLC, this provision is unenforceable. In the event the LLC desired to accept housing choice vouchers, there is a waiver process that can be followed through the U.S. Housing and Urban Development Department. The waiver process must be complete and approved prior to any housing choice voucher contracts being entered into with the LLC. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request Mayor and City Council approval.
Thank you, Mike. We are in a public hearing to consider a request. We are in a public hearing to consider City Council adopt the attached resolution approving a development agreement by and between the City of Dubuque, Iowa, and Staver Munch LLC, providing for the issuance of urban renewal tax increment revenue grant obligations. Do we have anyone here in chambers to address us on this item? Seeing no one here. Anyone virtually? Nope. All right.
No input.
Thank you. Back to us then for discussion. Ms. Farber.
So Mike, I just have one question on clarification on the housing choice vouchers. So that means this property will not be able to receive housing choice vouchers, or that people cannot apply for housing choice vouchers?
That's correct.
Okay, and we are still okay with the project and the TIF and the housing grants, knowing that?
Yes, so we actually modified the language for this agreement and future agreements where it says they need to accept housing choice vouchers if permitted or if allowed. I don't have the exact language in front of me. And as I said, in this case, it wouldn't be permitted by HUD because Chris Staver will be a city council member. So this is a HUD rule, not a City of Dubuque rule.
Okay, thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Any other discussion or questions? Mr. Resnick.
Thank you. So, Mr. Van Milligan, you mentioned future requirements as a council member. So do any developers, if they're a member of the council, are they still liable are they still able to bring development agreements before us with their name on it?
Yes.
And so but they would just
Have to abstain from voting on their own agreements. I mean, the city attorney could address that, but.
So okay, and so you can say that, I mean, because that would be tough on their livelihood if they're now able to make development agreements. Thank you. Go ahead.
So each of the circumstances is going to have to be looked at likely individually, because there are some provisions within the Iowa Code that prohibit certain types of contracts, and there are certain qualifications and processes that have to be followed. So as needed, we will review that and kind of cross that bridge when we get there.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, any other questions or discussion? Seeing and hearing none, motion here is to receive and file and adopt this resolution. So Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprink.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
That motion passes 6-0.
Next is public input. At this time, anyone participating in the meeting may address the City Council on the action items on the agenda or on matters under the control of the City Council. For all in-person attendees, please approach the podium and state your name and address when the mayor asks if there is any in-person input. For all remote attendees, please enter your name and address in the chat function or state your name and address over the phone when the mayor asks if there is any virtual input. If more than one participant would like to speak, Then city staff will determine the speaking order of the participants. Individual remarks are limited to 5 minutes, and the overall public input period is limited to 30 minutes. Under the Iowa Open Meetings Law, the City Council can take no formal action on comments given during public input or that do not relate to the action items on the agenda.
All right, thank you, Adrian. Do you have any public input this evening?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, ladies and gentlemen of the council, City Manager Mike Van Milligan, most excellent staff of the City of Dubuque. My name is Rick Dickinson, and I serve as the president of Greater Dubuque Development Corporation, and I reside at 205 Hill Street here in Dubuque. I rise at this occasion really as a point of personal privilege to thank Mayor and Council for trying to move heaven and earth to have commercial air service in our market. As I've shared with you before, I'm a firm believer, now more than ever, that without commercial air service, our region can never reach its full potential. So I thank you for trying. And I fully understand that it's too heavy a lift. If you average, and we are below this, about $300,000 a month to subsidize commercial air service to the Chicago O'Hare Airport. It's a lot of money. And it's frustrating when the Federal Aviation Administration announced last week that they intend to spend $1 billion so we can have jungle gyms in our hub airports across the country. That $1 billion, if you took the $3.6 million at $300,000 a month, would provide commercial air service in its present form in Dubuque for 277 years. Yet our congressional delegation, and the congressional delegations around the country, see fit to say they can do nothing to provide essential air service to our communities and the communities like Dubuque across the country. So I thank you for trying, and I believe that this effort will be prima facie evidence that essential air service is essential for rural America and communities like Dubuque. But too often we talk about things like commercial air service from the perspective of economic development. But I'd like to put the human element on it. We've supplied in our office, thanks to the funding from a nonprofit, Dubuque Initiatives, to try to encourage Dubuquers to use the Dubuque Regional Airport $100 vouchers. And so far, we've issued $100 checks to 1,239 folks in our community. But what's more important, and I've just taken a selection of these, just a handful of the comments we get from the people to share with you and the taxpayers of Dubuque the human element of commercial air service in our community. Now, let's use first names in most cases. Maureen said, "I love the Dubuque Airport and hope it continues to flourish. My experience was excellent in Dubuque in comparison to O'Hare." Marlene said, "I want to say thank you so much for all the efforts to keep the airport open to travel from Dubuque to destinations all over. I feel it is a great boost for our area and hope it remains so permanently." Anna said, "After so many years of taking the O'Hare bus to Rockford and then driving, it has truly been such a pleasure to fly into Dubuque again. Everyone on staff is so friendly and the complimentary snacks are very much appreciated." Christina said, "I wanted to also share that despite a delay in my return flight that caused an additional overnight stay, I would still highly recommend this airport and airline. In fact, because of that experience, I would recommend it more. Connie and the team made a really awful experience not only bearable, but dare I say, enjoyable. From the TSA to the airline crew to the security team, all were amazing, kind, and thoughtful. I travel a lot for work, and I'm so thankful to count Dubuque now as a new destination. I am looking forward to my next meeting and will insist that I am booked into Dubuque and not Cedar Rapids and Madison. It even makes the O'Hara connection worth it. Thanks again for this special experience in a really special and beautiful place. Go Connie and team. Keep up the amazing work. And lastly, a senior who shared in the email that they were recently diagnosed with dementia. It was my first time in the airport. It was clean, and all the staff were accommodating, pleasant, helpful, and went above and beyond my expectations. I hope business picks up and the airport can remain open. The flights to and from Chicago were great. This airport provides people who don't drive anymore, like me, vacationers, business people, a safe and quick way to get to O'Hare, who has great connecting flights to anywhere a person chooses to go. Thank you for your efforts to try to have air service here for economic development. But more importantly, thank you for having tried to have commercial air service here for the human element, the people who are our friends and our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Rick, for your comments. Any other public input this evening? Seeing none here. Anything virtually, Corey? Thank you.
Written input was submitted regarding action item number 1 from the following: Mary Geisler, 2310 High Cloud, DBQ Air, Gail Chavanel and Bill Dickin, 1155 Kelly Lane, Joel Pusateri, and Brian Klinkner.
All right, thank you very much, Adrian. All right. Seeing no more public input, we can move on to action items, please.
Action item number 1 is commercial air service minimum revenue guarantee.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Resnick.
I move to receive and file and discuss among the council.
Second.
Got a motion by Resnick and a second by Wethel. Mike, please.
Thank you. Knowing that the Greater Dubuque Development Corporation and the Dubuque Area Chamber of Commerce were not successful in working with the business community to raise $650,000 in matching funds for the Denver Air Minimum Revenue Guarantee, Airport Director Todd Dalsing has been negotiating with Denver Air. They have arrived at the following 3 options to be considered. Number 1, Denver Air terminates service on January 15, 2026. There would be a $50,000 payment plus half of the January minimum revenue guarantee, which is estimated at $165,515. So that option number 1 total cost would be an additional $215,515 in addition to paying the MRG through the end of December of this year. Number 2, Denver Air terminates service on January 31st, 2026. $50,000 payment plus the January minimum revenue guarantee estimate of $331,030. So for the month of January, this would equal $381,030. And as I said, in addition to paying the MRG through the end of December. Number 3, Denver Air terminates service on March 15th, 2026. So this is consistent with the required 90-day notice to terminate the agreement. This would be the MRG for January, February, and half of March, and that estimate is $708,666. I respectfully recommend that you select option 1, the January 15, 2025 service termination date at an estimated cost of $215,515 for the month of January. This will allow people who have purchased tickets beyond that date to book new flights. The nonprofit Dubuque Air has $50,030.11 to help cover the MRG cost. With the current MRG payment for Denver Air and the total estimate of $510,048 for November and December, the city would have $685,550.34 remaining in the amount of city funds budgeted for the minimum revenue guarantee after making these option 1 payments. It is important to remember that the amount of the minimum revenue guarantee payments are at this point just an estimate. The city of Dubuque has every intention of continuing to work with the nonprofit Dubuque Air to seek commercial air service for the Dubuque Regional Airport.
All right, thank you, Mike. Well, we have arrived at a day that I was hoping we wouldn't arrive at, and I'm about to issue one of my most disappointing votes that I've ever had as a city council member at this desk, because I can't, in good conscience, vote to continue this service, knowing that we are funding this straight out of our own pocket, going forward with a general fund revenue that is at risk in a really difficult situation. I do think that our service would continue to grow. I do think that the flights will continue to be very, very successful in terms of being completed on time and being some of the feedback that Mr. Dickinson gave us. I think people are really enjoying this service, honestly, the people who are using it. The problem is we just can't grow it fast enough. And it's been a real challenge. I want to say first a sincere thank you to many people. First of all, thank you to Denver Air Connection for being the airline that showed up. They're the airline that said yes to working with Dubuque and giving this a shot, and they've done a great job through some pretty serious challenges. I mean, the whole construction thing at O'Hare, I don't know if you get a bigger pain than what we had to deal with the construction at O'Hare for that 6 months that we had to deal with it. But in doing so, Denver Air Connection has made multiple changes, multiple shifts in the right direction, gave us morning flights, evening flights. Everything has gone really, really well. They've been very, very good partners. People need to know that because they're a good airline to work with. I hope other communities continue to work with them. I would love to work with them in the future if that opportunity came again for Dubuque. They've just been fantastic to work with. I got to thank all of you as city council members. We've made this a high priority or top priority in the last few years. We have done so knowing that this was going to be an incredible lift. We stuck our necks out, I think, politically, to be able to do something that was important for the community. And I think it was the right thing to do, and I want to thank you for doing it. I need to thank DBQ Air and the colleagues that are on there, a number of people serving on that board. Really, this is a group of people who just came together and said, we have to fix this issue. We have to find a way to get air service in Dubuque again. And that group of people became more and more organized and more focused as time went on and accomplished what we wanted to accomplish at first. We got air service back within 2 years in Dubuque. That's a pretty big accomplishment, honestly. And we did it with working with our federal partners to be able to get some funding to do it. And I think mostly you need to thank the Dubuquers who have supported this service and used this service. I think there's a lot of stories like the ones that Rick was giving to us in his comments of people who are using this and see it as necessary for our community. We're giving up something really, really good here, and that's tough. You know, I don't particularly like losing. In fact, I hate it. And in this case, we're losing a battle. And this one's tough. This is a tough battle to lose, and we are doing it. But it is just one battle in a much larger journey that we have ahead of us. Because the bottom line is, this particular path did not work, but something has to. We have to have air service for people to fly out of Dubuque to get to where they need to go. Something has to work. So we have to continue to turn over every single leaf and figure out every single possibility for how we can make this happen. You know, and just to speak to the airports around us, you can stop competing against us. You know, the Cedar Rapids Airport, the Eastern Iowa Airport, Madison, Moline, you don't have to put billboards in our town when we get our flights back next time. You don't have to do that. We don't want to be you. We don't want to be the Eastern Iowa Airport. We don't want to be Madison. We don't want to be the Quad Cities Airport in Moline. We want to be an airport that connects the people in our region to a major hub to get somewhere where they need to go. I think that's important that we have that in this community, and I think it's really important that it's something that we try to work together on. You know, we probably do fit within the Essential Air Service Program. I talked about that the last time we had this topic on the agenda a couple weeks ago. The real challenge here, and speaking to our members of Congress, is that we understand that this is not something that has been done before. Nobody has made this request and successfully gone through to be able to get back into the Essential Air Service Program after this program was closed in the 2011-2012 timeframe. We understand that, but I'm also going to go back to my earlier point. Something has to be done to make sure that the people of Dubuque are connected to the rest of the world. They deserve it. We all deserve it, this community deserves it, and we need it badly. We're gonna recognize even more of a need for it in the next 2 to 3 years. We might not feel it quite yet, but in the next 2 to 3 years, we're really, really gonna need this. So we've gotta find a way to get it done. So I'll just close right now, and then I'll open up to everybody else to be able to talk, by saying that, while I'm gonna vote to not continue this currently, I do wanna make sure that I stress that I'm immediately going to turn around and continue to work on this issue. I will be having this conversation every single time I get the opportunity to speak to our elected representatives. I'll be having this conversation with our business community constantly. We'll continue to meet as DBQ Air. We already have plans to do so. Continue to bring this back to this table. To my council colleagues, I want to make sure that you're aware of some things. I don't think it was actually in Mike's memo, but there's another caveat to the 3 choices here. The choice number 1 is actually a more helpful choice for Denver Air itself as a partner, too. It gives them the opportunity to move the plane somewhere else where they can continue their business, because they're losing ours, but they need to continue on in their business, too. And as a partner, I think they've made a very fair request to end service on the 15th. And then also, you might have questions, and I think Todd might be able to answer these, but you might have questions about how many people are going to be impacted by this when we take this away on the 15th rather than letting it go out another 90 days. There will be people who are impacted, and I completely, I can absolutely understand the frustration of that. But the numbers are not in the numbers are not in the thousands. It's in the couple hundred that I think we're really working with here. And while that is difficult to take this away in that time frame, I do think it's the right thing to do based on the money we can save as a city and based on the situation that we find ourselves in. So I'll close with that for right now and open it up. Ms. Wethel.
Tonight, I want to speak about federal funding opportunities. In 2021, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act was passed. In our delegation at the federal level, this legislation was supported by Senator Grassley, and I want to personally thank him for that support. It was not supported by Senator Ernst or Congresswoman Hinson, but since that time, Senator Grassley, Senator Ernst, and Congresswoman Hinson supported our grant application for the RAISE grant, which is a $25 million 14th Street overpass project that was awarded to us in June of 2024, provided through the Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act. As Mr. Dickinson shared this week, from the funding of the 2021 Infrastructure and Investment and Jobs Act, it was announced that $1 billion will be invested in making travel family-friendly again. As part of this $1 billion program, exercise facilities and playgrounds will be placed in airports, stating that it will be bringing about a golden age in travel. In the news, you might have seen Secretary of the DOT, Sean Duffy, and Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy doing pull-ups at Reagan National Airport last week at the press conference announcing the program. I would like to bring to the attention of Senators Grassley and Ernst and Congresswoman Hinson that I am incredibly grateful for their advocacy as it relates to the RAISE grant that we received. As a healthcare provider, I am grateful to Secretary Kennedy and Duffy for efforts in wellness. But right now, Senators Grassley, Ernst, and Congresswoman Hinson, we need you. We need an appropriations bill and the EAS program reopened. We have done what you have asked of us. We have invested time, treasure, and commitment in recent months at your recommendation to show you we did what you asked. To our elected officials in Washington, what more do you want from us? Because right now, the answer to this question is go without air service, and that is not acceptable. Why are our residents, taxpayers, business leaders, and city government being held to a different standard than Burlington, population 24,000, Fort Dodge, population 24,000, Mason City, population 27,000, Sioux City, population 86,000, and Waterloo, population 67,000, all enrolled in EAS? If the answer from our federal government right now is a golden age in which they will fund $1 billion for gyms in airports, but they won't fund air service in rural America, then I must respectfully ask them to pause in reflection of this juxtaposition. And I call upon each of you, our residents, our business leaders, to consider personal advocacy with our congressional delegation, a personal email, a phone call. I will support this recommendation. I want to thank our community members for the steadfast support in very heated, difficult political times. I will not give up on rural America, and I will never give up on the residents of Dubuque or the goal of air service. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Whipple.
Mr. Mayor?
Ms. Farber.
Yeah, so I am going to do point counterpoint here. And I am actually in support of maintaining commercial air service. And I just want to, from a business perspective and from the fact that I believe we need to continue. And if you recall, our commercial air service was a top priority, is a top priority for a strategy and an action plan to sustain and expand. So let me just walk you through my thought here and some of the facts. And I know, as we said previously, we're between a rock and a hard place, and that it's a difficult situation here between the government support and taxpayer support. And I know that the city has limited resources and that other regional airports are federally funded. And we do not have equitable access, as you just mentioned. But let's take a look at our dollars and cents, okay, you know, our budget. And Todd, I want to thank you for your memo and your notes. So the Dubuque status, as you had indicated, is a non-primary commercial service airport, which you indicate is between 25,000 and 10,000 enplanements, which is a lower government priority than perhaps some of the neighboring cities that you had mentioned. And the federal funding options for this category is between 150,000 and 1.3 million. And our current guesstimate, based on your indications here in your memo, was that we would probably year-end have less than 6,000 enplanements. And so that means that the fee would cost us for a full year would be about 3.6 million, and through March it would be 1.2 million approximately based on the documents. Okay, so looking at our budget for fiscal year 26, our total budget is about 276.4 million. And if you took at that a rate of the 3.6 that we would need for the minimum revenue requirement, that would be about 1.25% of the total city budget. Okay, so I think that the conversation is, again, between a rock and a hard place, because those are those folks that agree and those that disagree. And I was going to reference an op-ed on the December 12th by Ms. Pankratz, who said, reliable air service is critical to the economic vitality, accessibility, long-term competitiveness of our region. And I know that we all agree on her advocacy, and also thank you, Rick, for your comments as well on that personal side. And I just think it's very, very important to hear that touch point, as you said. From a business point of view, speaking of the air service being an economic engine, I remember when I was a student in college that I always looked at Cedar Rapids as a hub because of the University of Iowa and some of the local businesses. Well, Dubuque needs to follow that path, and the reasons being, of course, is the UD expansion for the medical school, aviation, and the Innovation Center. Our other local and regional university populations also need this service. And local, regional, and national businesses, also with headquarters here and major operations in Dubuque, need this service. The Field of Dreams needs this service, and other tourism and recreational amenities that make us the masterpiece of the Mississippi. So the business case is pretty apparent to me as to why, and I think everybody is in agreement based on our previous conversation. And we also know that air service is a workforce preservation and expansion benefit. Our business case will take more than 1 year, and my experience as doing entrepreneurial endeavors is that it takes money to make money, and this is a very, very famous business strategy. And it's too soon to give up, I think. And my experience, most business startups take 1 to 2 years to outperform. And again, for the funding and the advocacy, just a reminder again that this is a top priority for us. Commercial air service strategy and an action plan to sustain and expand. And again, it's only 1.25% of our budget. And I also want to mention something else that Todd had mentioned in his report, and also I think Molly Grover did as well. There are some options to explore for best solutions, and you mentioned the DI in terms of the vouchers. DI also gave a loan at a very preferable rate to the DRA, and maybe there's some options there to further explore about a DRA loan. Regional partners, grants, fundraising grants, Destination Iowa, naming rights, just some of the few ideas that could be tossed about as you have your next series of meetings about how to get this project sustainable. And at risk, you mentioned that if we had operations at the airport that were challenged, the list of capital improvements might also be a burden not from the federal government, but from on the city, and that could range from 1 million to 5 million. And that, at 5 million, is more than it costs to maintain the service. And some of the mentioned items that you said were runways, hangars, and I know that you're at capacity right now and there's a waiting list for private vehicles. There's a new taxway that the UD needs for its hangars, and we need fire trucks and snowplows, not to mention the activity of the charters and the private jets. So is Dubuque's reputation going to be one of flyover country? Is it going to be a challenge for future industrial and commercial partners? Is it going to be a challenge for future population retention and attraction? So these are the things strategically that one should be looking at, and why I support the continuation of the air service. And Dubuque is really seen nationally as an innovator, talking about all the high-tech things that we're doing. We have tremendous momentum here and a lot of activity from our local businesses and our local universities. And especially in higher education and tourism, we just can't be beat. But this will be a challenge. It is really a key success factor that helps promote this momentum. And I think our image and our economic growth is contingent upon what we do next. And so again, I just, from a business point of view, really think we should bite the bullet and continue. Thank you.
Mr. Farber? Mr. Jones, did I see you raising your hand over there?
I didn't raise my hand, but I'm ready.
Go for it.
I agree with Susan. It's not time to throw in the towel, but I thought that in October before the election, and I thought that that would have some political cost, and I think that it did. I think that's one of the reasons I'm not going to be here at your next meeting. And I think the community has spoken. I'm disappointed in that for a number of reasons, because I know that the 7 of us up here have spent hundreds of hours learning about this and learning all the implications of it and complications of it and repercussions of not having it. Better than a guy that read it's going to cost X amount of dollars a day to subsidize the airlines. I also have great fear for the future of the city's economic health in light of what's happening at the state and federal level in all out areas. And this wasn't the only thing that was a top priority for us coming out of goal setting last fall. And for that reason, even though I really, really want to try this for another 6 months or so, I'm going to vote to support the city manager's recommendation tonight. And that's a hard vote. But I think if we're going to succeed in the many other things that are enormously expensive, we had some conversation about the Parks and Rec Master Plan a week ago. Big plan, great ideas, big money. We want to get as much of it done as we can. If we don't have this money available for consideration and doling in that direction, it's going to slow us down. We're going to grow the fire department staff. That's big money. That's big general fund money that can't be funded other ways. We may or may not get the grant. You may have a decision point at that point on how much of that you're going to be able to do with City of Dubuque property tax money. So we're in a terrible place. We've been in a terrible place since the Legacy Airlines took their American Rescue Plan dollars that were designed to sustain staff and use it instead to incentivize staff to leave the airlines and help to exacerbate the pilot shortage and improve their marketing position to fly only the very most profitable markets. I think they violated the law. I think people should be prosecuted. That's not my job, but we shouldn't be standing for that. Congress should not have stood for that. The federal Department of Justice should not have stood for that, but they did. I think that our federal representatives need to do something. If they can't open EAS, okay, let's do a special appropriation for Dubuque, who's getting screwed compared to every other similar-sized city in Iowa that has a subsidized airport under EAS. Call it something else if you can't open that, but do something. Standing there and watching our efforts burn down is not an acceptable solution, and doing nothing is not an acceptable solution. So with a heavy heart, I'm going to vote to support this, even though I think it's maybe the wrong thing to do, but in the bigger picture of what all needs to get done in this community over the next few years, it probably is the best answer for tonight. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Johnson. Mr. Resnick.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I think the big decider here is our residents, our taxpayers. Most of you went out there, got the idea and got the general idea from our taxpayers that they reject local taxpayer funds for use with the commercial air service. If we were to eliminate 1.25% of our services and dedicate that to commercial air service, our citizens would say, boy, you didn't need to be collecting money for that 1.2%. Well, I think we should just, we still are not for air service, right? So that would just lead to a lot of good things we've got going being cut, and then we still, that right now the situation with air service is so undecided and changing. Would we really risk all the good things that we've been doing here in Dubuque on something as tough to pin down as commercial air service? Well, we've got infrastructure. Infrastructure was also a big issue in the last election. And we are determined to invest in infrastructure for our businesses and our residents. So I think we are going to have, as Mr. Jones mentioned, some more great reasons to spend our residents' money on here in Dubuque. And so that way I could see, we've got to do this. I remember the entire city council went to Washington, D.C. to plead our cause, our case, as well as Dubuque initiatives. So many of our businesses here, also with the chamber and our own development, our great development corporation. And it is just not to be right now for many reasons, as you mentioned. So, the idea that we're going to spend $10,000 a day to keep commercial air service from our residents, that's not going to make it. So I agree that we will never give up on commercial air service here. Relentless improvement is what we're after. And that's what we have been after, and we were after it really hard. It's disappointing right now, but there is another day. As Annie would say, sun will come up tomorrow. And tomorrow we're going to be able to have a great case for investing in Dubuque. I have to say, Ms. Wethel mentioned a lot of great things that have come from our federal partners, and we've got a lot to be thankful for. She mentioned just a few things. So in many ways, we are, through hard work and getting things done right, we have been getting funds from the national, from the Fed and from state government. But this one, we're just banging our head against right now, and it's time to stop. And let's get some, in the meantime, maybe we'll get some more ideas. I think our Dubuque Air Group and Airport Manager Todd Dawson have been doing wonderful things. Every avenue has been looked at. And for right now, and only for now, we're going to have to put a pause on that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Sprank?
Thank you. Yeah, it's not always easy to shut something down, unfortunately, and we've tried. You, Mr. Mayor, and all DBQ Airs tried tremendously, and it's just a wall we can't get over, unfortunately, and hopefully we can find something, another avenue in the future that can get air service back. But as I reminded folks, once it's gone, and there will be repercussions, and we will have to figure out how to pay for capital improvements. So that's all I got. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, Ms. Farber, you got the two angels on your shoulder, and as they say, and the one that's just screaming at me totally agrees with you. I just want you to know that. This is going to be the hardest thing to do, because I think the right thing to do for our future is to maintain air service. The challenge is there isn't really anybody else. There are very few places in the United States that are doing that with general fund, local property tax dollars just coming out of the general fund to pay for it. There's some sort of funding avenue that is identified or created to be able to do that. We need to continue to explore that possibility and have that. And honestly, that's going to take discussions with the state of Iowa. We need to talk to our legislators and talk to the governor and be able to have some sort of path that we could start to pursue that would provide some funding for a minimum revenue guarantee for an airline. That's just the way the whole thing works. Minimum revenue guarantee is how air service works in all communities that need to start it up. But to do it out of our general fund without a clearly identified pathway, that's the part that provides me the pause. For me personally, I don't disagree with you in doing whatever you want and need to do in this moment. But I just wanted to be able to mention that.
And if I could just annotate that, the time to find the long-term solution is now. And the reason that I support continuing is because you can continue and metal to the pedal, pedal to the metal, and just start working on those solutions and encouraging your partners with the time constraint, if you will, or whatever constraint you want to put on it. Time is of the essence, as they say in contracts. And I just think that it's a mistake. I think that it's really, as you said, Danny, it will be hard to bring it back. And there's going to be an enormous trend line up against us. It's going to just be a really tall mountain to climb without necessarily the right kind of boots. And I just think that if we can bear the funding going forward, then it gives you time. It gives the city time. It gives your committee time to really look at all of the alternatives in a very aggressive and forthright manner. And I think the business community would understand it. Definitely the university community is going to understand it. They're going to feel very hurt, very disappointed. And here they are trying their best to bring innovation, to bring expansion of the definition of what Dubuque can offer. This momentum is it's just really a transition point for the city of Dubuque. And I just think it would be a shame not to be there behind the scenes trying to do what we can, as opposed to saying no and then trying to regroup in the near future. And I think if you look at this from a business perspective, you can take a short-term hit in order to get a long-term gain. And I really, in terms of what I think was said on behalf of the capital improvements for the airport, if the city ends up paying $5 million because we can't get federal funding, that $5 million could be used to pay for this, and then you would have your federal funding because your enplanements would go up, and then therefore that range of grants from the federal would be there. And there's all kinds of funding. You could even go for naming rights. You can do all kinds of things inside that terminal to help generate some funds. I mean, look what we did for the Imon Arena and how that is helping that arena. So I just think it's, let's put a little bit of a business perspective on this and, not just wash our hands. I think it's really important.
Yeah.
My parting comments.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Real quick, Mike, can I ask you to help us with some math? Because I want to put a number to short-term pain for long-term gain. Currently, we have, as a council, we have identified funding through April, right? I mean, we essentially said there was funding that we were going to use based on your recommendation to go through April, but we don't have anything after that, right? Identified currently. And
That's
if
correct.
you could help us with a little bit of just putting the numbers into reality, what that would look like for us.
Well, if you take my recommendation and terminate the service effective January 15th, you would have $685,000 remaining in the money you budgeted towards the MRG. And traditionally, January, February, and March are light flying months, I believe to be the case. And so we'd be looking at $200,000 to $300,000 a year, a month in the MRG. And so it probably would get you to April 1st and maybe a little bit beyond that, but it wouldn't get you to June 30th, which is the end of our fiscal year. So you'd have to find probably $500,000 to $700,000 additional to get you, well, as a matter of fact, we challenged the business community to $750,000, and the county stepped up with $100,000, which, by the way, will not be spending. If you take my recommendation, we won't be asking the county for that $100,000 commitment money. So then the business community was challenged for $650,000. So you'd have to find an additional $750,000, or if the county still stayed in with their $650,000 to get you to June 30th. Then you'd have to go through the April budget process to identify, right, how you're going to pay it after July 1st. And I'll just be frank with you, I have no ideas of any substance. Sure, there's things we could do around the edges that would get you some money, but it's not going to get you $3.5 million, which is what it might take for the MRG next fiscal year.
Thanks, Mike. Ms. Wethel?
Yeah, I just think it's important that we say, when we ask the business community to contribute additional money, I do not blame them for feeling that they shouldn't have to. Because if they were in Burlington, Fort Dodge, Mason City, Sioux City, or Waterloo, guess what? They wouldn't have to. And so we need to take this back to the source of concern, which is our federal partners, and ask our business community to continue, as they have, support us, our institutions of higher learning to support us, those who support the field of dreams, those who support additional development in our business community, continue to advocate with us as you have. And for those who were incredibly critical to a degree that I really, truly cannot understand, because we are all Dubuquers and we are all here for the right reasons. But for those of you who were critical of our decision, you're allowed to do that. I'm an elected official. But now it's your turn to step up to bat. Show me your ideas. Because if you said that you wanted air service, but you didn't support our plan in an effort to try and get our numbers up, it's your turn. And I need your help. I need everybody's help to do it. And I'm here to fight the fight and to continue to work to get it done, whatever options we have. And I don't disagree with you, Councilwoman Farber. I wholeheartedly agree with you on so many of the points you brought forward. So I thank you for what you've done in your preparation. Thank you.
All right, well, we've had a good discussion here and a good opportunity to be able to, I think, put our thoughts out and kind of where we are. So I appreciate that from everyone and everyone who's given us feedback leading up to this. What we are going to need here specifically is to technically end this service, which is what I hear the majority of this table actually advocating for currently. We would need a motion to direct the Airport Commission to issue a notice of termination for the service with Denver Air Connection. Is that a decent verbiage, what I just said? I could say it again, or Krenna, maybe you could give us the motion that would need in that case.
I'm thinking.
Mr. Mayor, could we satisfy that by just saying option one?
Mr. Mayor, could we ask Todd to step up? Because I think the Airport Commission already gave him authority to do it if the council ended the MRG payments, but Todd can speak to that.
Yes, good evening, Todd Dalsing, Dubuque Regional Airport. So I'm trying to remember the date of the meeting, but the last Airport Commission meeting, they had, I had made a recommendation to continue negotiations with Denver Air to bring those to the council, and then whatever the council, decides tonight, that I have the ability to enact on that. So they've already basically given me the permission at the last meeting to enact on your decision tonight.
Okay, thank you for that clarification.
So I believe then the motion you will want to make is similar to what Councilman Resnick said, which is, the receive and file and move to select option one, terminating Denver Air Service on January 15th, 2026.
Thank you. That's very helpful. So we would need that motion if we want to move forward in that direction, or if anyone wants to make
Mr.
any
Mayor?
specific motion. Mr. Resnick.
I move to receive and file and select option one to terminate service on January 15th, 2026.
Second by Wethel.
Got a motion by Mr. Resnick and a second by Wethel. Any other further comments before I call for the vote? All right. Well, thank you all for your work on this issue and for the discussion tonight once again. All right, Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Farber.
No.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
All right, that motion passes 5-1.
Action item number 2 is contract for services between the City of Dubuque and Greater Dubuque Housing Trust Fund.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
move to receive and file the documents and adopt the resolution.
Second by Sprank.
A motion by Jones and a second by Sprank. Krenna, I think I'm coming to you this time.
Interim Housing and Community Development Director Sandy Fowler is recommending City Council approval of the attached contract for services with the Greater Dubuque Housing Trust Fund and authorizing myself and role as city attorney to execute the agreement on behalf of the city. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request mayor and city council approval.
Thank you, Krenna. Discussion. I have a question on this one, Mike, and maybe Krenna and whoever it is going to be. Are we going to have city representation of some sort in the form of staff or a city council member serving on this board that is going to be formed in this way? And I'll point out, this was actually a question that came up in our most recent Dubuque Initiatives meeting as we were talking about this, because that's a part of Dubuque Initiatives work as well, so. Thank you.
Good evening, Maddie Haverland, Urban Development and Housing Rehabilitation Project Manager. Yes, this is something that has been discussed with the new board that's been developed. We actually recently had a meeting, and it was discussed about inviting a city council member to be on that board.
Great, thanks, Patty. Any sense of time frame on when that is going to be? I mean, we have 2 new council members coming on, obviously. We're going to be, assigning boards to each of us.
January? Okay. I think it's going to be discussed at the January meeting.
Okay.
Because it will be after this is approved and the ordinance is repealed that board will actually become active. So I think they're going to be looking in January for that.
Okay, Thank you for that information. That's actually helpful as we plan ahead too, I think, to assign those roles to each of us. So thanks, Maddie. We might have more questions for you, so don't go too far. Mr. Resnick.
Yes, so either for Ms. Haverland or Mr. Van Milligan, there's our residents are listening right now about it. It's kind of a thick title that you're not exactly sure what's going on with contract for services between the City of Dubuque and Greater Dubuque Housing Trust Fund. What exactly, if you wouldn't mind summarizing, or what are the changes being proposed?
Sure. So the City of Dubuque currently has a local housing trust fund advisory committee that makes all of the decisions regarding the funding that comes to the city as an entitlement city from the State Housing Trust Fund. So the way that the Iowa Finance Authority has written their certification requirements for a local housing trust fund would exclude the way that Dubuque's trust fund is currently set up. So if we were to request certification today as the City of Dubuque with the structure that we have in place with our local housing trust fund as it is in the ordinance, we would be denied. And so I've been working with IFA for the past 3 years or so to figure out a transition plan. Well, we as a staff have, and then of course with the Community Foundation has been instrumental in that as well. But we've been working together sort of through this public-private partnership to figure out how can we best make this structure work in our community. And the difference now is going to be that the Greater Dubuque Housing Trust Fund is its own 501c3 nonprofit organization. That's super beneficial for us in Dubuque and actually opens up a lot more opportunities to do more with the local housing trust fund, because there's now a lot of opportunity for more fundraising. We're working very closely, like I said, with the Community Foundation. Wakar is here with me tonight and can talk a little bit more about the Impact Investment Fund that's also going to amplify what we're able to do with the local housing trust fund now.
Thank you very much for that answer. And as far as the housing, does that include manufactured homes, et cetera, or rent for the land that these manufactured homes are on, or is that something way off topic?
That's a really good question. Currently, as we've been doing this work under the city umbrella, what we're running into right now is that our staff that does all the administrative work and runs these programs is funded through the Community Development Block Grant under Rehab Staff and Services. And so there's some conflict there with that funding source. But again, with this transition, I think there's more opportunity to be able to raise the local funds and look at other grant opportunities to be able to address that issue.
Thank you. And finally, is that a housing trust fund for Dubuque County or just within the city limits?
So this IFA's, the Iowa Finance Authority, part of the certification requirement is that a city and a county can only be served by one housing trust fund. So there is a Dubuque County Housing Trust Fund. That requirement, I believe, is specific to the funds that come from the state. And so it's possible that the Greater Dubuque Housing Trust Fund may be able to have further reach rather than just the city of Dubuque, but the state funds that come to Dubuque as through the entitlement will have to stay in Dubuque along with the 25% match.
All right, thank you very much. So, the folks who own manufactured homes are very often need affordable housing, and that is affordable housing for them. So that's one of our things that we're very interested here in Dubuque and at the council. So I appreciate those answers. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mm-hmm. Others? All right. Thank you, Maddie, very much for the information. All right. No further questions or discussion. Motion here is to receive and file and adopt this resolution. So Adrian, just call the roll, please.
Sprague.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
Motion passes 6-0.
Action item number 3 is repeal of Title II, Chapter 5, Article D, Trust Fund Advisory Committee.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Resnick.
I move to receive and file, and I further move that the requirement that a proposed ordinance be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to the meeting at which it is to be finally passed be suspended.
Second by Farber.
Motion by Resnick, second by Farber. Krenna, back to you.
Interim Housing and Community Development Director Sandy Fowler is recommending City Council repeal of Title II, Chapter 5, Article D, Trust Fund Advisory Committee in the City Code. The City of Dubuque established a local housing trust fund over 30 years ago to address affordable housing and meet the needs of the city's low and moderate income residents. The primary role of the local housing trust fund has been to increase affordable housing, assist first-time home buyers with down payments and closing costs, rehabilitate affordable housing, and invest in neighborhood revitalization. With the governance transition of the local housing trust fund from the City of Dubuque to a standalone nonprofit, the Greater Dubuque Housing Trust Fund, as outlined in the contract for services that was the item just prior to this, the ordinance is no longer necessary. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request Mayor and City Council approval.
Thank you, Kenna. So to be clear, this basically does the sort of technical cleanup following the discussion we just had. Now that we're making this change, we need to change the ordinance to go along with that change.
Correct, and that is precisely why you handled them in this order, because we needed to make sure that the agreement was approved before repealing the ordinance.
All right, thank you, Kenna. Okay. Any discussion? Any other further questions there? Okay. Well, motion here is to receive and file and waive the 3 readings. So, Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
That motion passes 6-0.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Resnick.
I move final consideration and passage of the ordinance.
Second by Farber.
Got a motion by Resnick, second by Farber. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
That motion passes 6-0.
Action item number 4 is special events ordinance amendment and process improvements.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
I move to receive and file the communications and further move that the requirement that a proposed ordinance be considered and voted on for passage at 2 council meetings prior to the meeting at which it is to be finally passed to be suspended.
Second by Sprank.
A motion by Jones and a second by Sprank. Adrian, I think I'm coming to you for this one.
Yes, and we actually have a presentation, so we're just going to take a moment to transition for that.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
That's weird.
It's very special.
Are you logged in by any chance? Oh, yeah, I don't know. Yeah, it looks like there's a slideshow option. Okay, I'm not being patient. We're going to do these slides in English.
Yeah, whatever that font
As
was
opposed
pretty
to whatever
strange.
we had first.
As opposed to symbols.
This is going to be
Yeah.
much more successful.
All right, yeah, go ahead.
All right, Corey Burbach, Assistant City Manager, and I've got a tag team of folks that are going to work with me tonight to talk about special events. So the agenda that we're going to cover is going to touch on several things that city staff do related to special events. The thing I want to focus on, and Adrian will bring us back to this at the end, the action that we're asking you to take tonight is specifically around updating the code related to special events. We wanted to tell you some of the other things we're working on because they're related, but the only action we need you to focus on tonight is the ordinance update that Adrian will be sharing with you. So I want you to imagine for a second your favorite special event in Dubuque. It might be a festival, it might be a 5K, it might be farmer's market, and chances are pretty good wherever that special event happens, the place that it happens was not designed for that, right? City streets, sidewalks, trails. We love the special events that happen in our community, but we want to acknowledge the departments that are up here because all of these departments work together behind the scenes to make sure that those awesome events that make Dubuque what it is can happen in spaces that weren't designed for them. So we want to say thank you to all these departments and all of our partners that work on special events throughout the year, and also say that this can be a little bit messy. If you look at all these departments that are working together to make these events happen in a way that the attendees usually don't even know, we just want to acknowledge all of the frontline staff that work at all hours of the day to make this happen. So here's the city's goals when it comes to special events, and this is the frame for why we decided to revisit this topic. They have gotten, as you looked at that list of departments involved, more and more complicated. And what we really asked staff to focus on as we wrapped up this year's special events are the goals on the screen. You all have said during your council goal setting for as long as I've been around that we want quality of life amenities, cultural experiences, a sense of community for everyone that lives in Dubuque or visits Dubuque. And that means that we have nonprofits and private sector partners who are creating these awesome events that we all love. We want to support those things. At the same time, we want to make sure that we are working with the event organizers to make sure that those attendees are safe. And that has been something that you've seen in communities across the country changing in the past few years. So we've really been focused on safety this year. Wherever possible, we want to get to yes for event organizers. We know that that takes creativity to pull off some of these really cool events. And when we say no to something, we want to make sure that we have a really clear and value-driven reason that we're saying that we can't pull that off on public property. And part of the reason we're doing this comprehensive presentation tonight is that we want to achieve the 3 goals above with a level of resources, and that is staff time and materials, that's realistic and is understood by the mayor and city council and other staff. So this is the frame that we're going to present our recommendations to you tonight in.
Adrian Breitfelder, City Clerk. So I'm going to summarize the ordinance that is presented to you tonight. As Corey mentioned, that is the key action that we're asking of council tonight. And it's part of the broader set of process improvements that we're making toward our special event process in order to streamline the process to make it more accessible for event organizers while at the same time improving clarity and communication and collaboration among event organizers and city staff, as well as city staff internally, all while making sure that safety maintains a high priority. So when you look at the red line of the ordinance, you'll notice that's a very colorful document, and so it can give off the impression that we're doing a lot of complex updates. But I really think when you look at it overall, and hopefully you'll see that the summary I'm about to present to you show that our intent is to really simplify a lot of the processes and our definitions to make sure that everyone is on the same page about what we classify as a special event, what our requirements and our processes and procedures are. So I'll take you through that section by section, starting with definitions and assemblies. So we've added a few definitions and also clarified a few definitions currently in the code, basically to make sure that there's consistent interpretation among city staff and the public, again, regarding what a special event is, what is classified as public property, private property, just simplifying and expanding on those definitions to make sure it's clear to everyone what we're referring to when we have those requirements in place for the permit. And then we have a section currently in place for public assemblies and other events of that nature. Regarding changes that are proposed to that section, we're expanding the types of properties where assemblies can take place for accuracy, shifting permit issuance from the city manager to the city clerk to streamline operations. So throughout the code, it mentions that the permit is issued by the city manager's office, but in terms of accuracy's sake, the applicant applies for the permit through the city clerk's office. So it makes much more sense to make sure that the ordinance accurately reflects the process that we have in place for receiving that application and issuance, which is why you see that change. We've also extended notice and response timelines, and we see that as being important because if there were to be a situation where a proposed assembly was occurring at a location that city staff did not feel comfortable with due to reasons of public safety or other related reasons, we would want to make sure that we have as much time as we possibly can to meet as key city staff and discuss potential alternatives and make sure that we're all aligned on that. And so by giving ourselves an extra day, that really is a crucial time frame in us in order to make sure that all of the right city staff are able to meet, because we recognize that making that type of proposal for a different location is one we take very seriously, recognizing that for public assemblies there are free speech, First Amendment rights intertwined with those. And so just making sure that all staff are aligned before we move forward with that. So giving ourselves extra time frame we feel is beneficial not only for city staff, but for the event organizers as well, to make sure that we're all aligned. Also clarifies specifically when assemblies are not allowed and adds flexibility for organizers to suggest alternate locations. Kind of as I mentioned, if there were a situation where and we feel an event could not happen at a proposed location, currently the city code just specifies that city staff are required to make recommendations for alternate locations. We're expanding through the ordinance the ability for organizers to also propose alternative locations as well. So just making it more of that collaborative experience between the organizers and city staff, which we think will help improve efficiency as well. We have added a provision that assemblies cannot interfere with city operations, and we've simplified language around restrictions on assemblies for reasons of public safety. And then we've also added clear authority to restrict or cancel assemblies during emergencies like disaster or public health threats. That's a provision that we currently have in the special events section of code, and we felt that it was necessary to include that throughout the code just for consistency and to make sure that authority is there for all types of events for those specific situations in that scope. Next is our special event permit section itself, which covers the majority of the events that our office permits. Similar to public assemblies, this section shifts permit authority issuance from city manager to the city clerk. We're also removing detailed application content, and so that way we can adjust requirements more easily as the needs change in terms of the application in real time. And one of the more significant changes you'll note here is that we are eliminating the refundable deposits. And historically, these were collected at $300 for events with food or beverages and $50 for events without them. And since many of our event hosts are nonprofits who host events, a $300 deposit can be a very significant fee for those organizations. And we found that overall we've been very fortunate that event organizers have been very good to the spaces that they've hosted. We haven't had too many compliance issues that have required holding that deposit. So it ended up creating a significant amount of work for city staff simply collecting that deposit and then having to refund it. So it really seemed that overall no one was really benefiting from that process. So by eliminating refundable deposits, we feel that we're moving a fairly significant barrier to a lot of, especially nonprofit organizations, being able to host events, while at the same time really improving a significant level of efficiency for city staff as part of that process. Instead, we're going to be focusing on accountability by allowing permit denials for applicants with unpaid obligations for past events. So we're listing as a provision for denial is that if any organization has any outstanding fees, obligations from past events, that would be a reason that we would deny someone for a permit. And we feel that that's a much more accurate and stronger reason to deny someone versus collecting that refundable deposit. We've also added language on our insurance requirements because that is a very crucial piece as part of special events, and we feel that it's necessary to codify those requirements. And we've also expanded the reasons a permit can be denied or revoked, especially in those emergency situations. The next section covers events on private property, and this section clears up essentially when a special event permit is needed for events that occur on private property. So we've amended the code to indicate that it's only required if the event has any type of impact on the public right-of-way. So any type of event on private property that would happen to impact a public sidewalk or city street for any reason would be a situation where we would require a special event permit. So previously, our requirements for events on private property were fairly broad, and I think there were certainly good intentions behind that, just to make sure that we could broadly apply it to any situation that city staff felt was necessary. But then the challenge with that is that it often led to different interpretations among event organizers and even among city staff about when a permit was required for events on private property. And so by really simplifying that requirement, we really feel like it'll be helpful for everyone to be aligned on when that is specifically required. We've also aligned the application and review standards with the details we have for public events, including the issuance and review criteria. And so this really just ensures consistent enforcement across all event types. And then the final piece is that we've added a new section called courtesy events. And so courtesy events are formally defined in the code as small-scale, low-impact activities that do not require event-specific city services and therefore do not require a permit. So we currently have a courtesy event process. It's just not formally codified, and so we felt that it was necessary to include that in code just to have that formally defined. Typically, because there's no permit required for these events, we've just always strongly encouraged that event organizers notify our office through a form that we have that a courtesy event is occurring. The key benefits of this are making sure that that event does not interfere with other scheduled events that are occurring that might be permitted. And we also do let our emergency responder staff know that those events are occurring in the unlikely chance there were to be some type of emergency situation in that area. They have an awareness that there is a gathering of people for that event. So always something that has been encouraged on a voluntary basis. And we just thought it was key as we were doing these updates to just have that codified as part of this amendment. And we also did allow restrictions or cancellations in emergency situations, similar to what you see for assemblies and special events, just in those off-chance situations where, for example, an EOC were to happen, we would obviously want to act upon that and make sure that certain events weren't occurring just for the safety of everyone involved. So those were the key summary updates for the code. And so I'm now going to turn it over to our police staff to talk a little bit more about the safety and security of special events in general.
Good evening. Joe Messrich, Assistant Police Chief. So this next 4 slides are going to kind of talk about where our focus areas have been when it comes to safety and security for our special events. And I want to start by kind of talking about 3 areas that I think we're really starting to do well on. The first is better communication across our police command staff. So a few months ago, you would have toured our Precision Policing Center, probably met our crime analyst. Our crime analyst is getting data from the clerk's office, putting together a weekly special event report for our supervisory staff so they know where our events are, right? How many people are expected? What level of security do they have? Does it involve a street closure? All those good things so that they can better deploy staff, right, to meet those needs. The other thing I think we're really starting to do very well is our collaboration with organizers. So we're used to working with organizers for, say, the July 3rd air show and fireworks, right? Those big, huge events. But some of the smaller street festivals, we've really been working hand in hand with some of those organizers. So Latinx Fest provided a good model for that. They came to the table early, months in advance. The clerk's office set up an initial meeting. We were able to, share our concerns. They were able to share their concerns. We listened to them. They listened to us. We toured their site, walked through their site plan multiple times, sat down, met with some of their volunteers, provided some training to them, and at the end of the day, they were very, very prepared, and they had a very safe event. So again, provides a really good model for everybody else in the community. And then vehicle mitigation, which we're going to spend a lot of time on tonight in the next couple of slides. So many of our special events are held on a closed city street, and whenever we have a high density of pedestrians on a street, whether closed by a barricade or not, vehicles are a very real threat, and that's with or without criminal intent possessed by the driver. So our federal partners continue to warn us about vehicle ramming attacks, like you would have seen in New Orleans last year, right? So that's always at the forefront of our mind when we're talking about Street Fest. But we also have to watch out for the drunk driver, the driver that has a medical emergency, lost or confused motorist, right? So we really want to harden our special event location so it's not just that type 3 construction type barricade, right? Some additional layers of security. So you can see in the picture here, this is just an example of the company's name is MIFRM, and they produce a modular vehicle barricade that will high center a vehicle and stop its forward progress. And luckily, we have some, right? So as part of the FY23 budget, you approved an improvement package, and we were able to purchase 4 boxes of these, right? Each box contains enough material for a 24-foot section of barrier, and you can make them longer or shorter depending on how much material you have. And the way they're deployed is our Public Works department will assemble a crew. They'll come in on a Saturday typically. They have to load these boxes onto a flat truck with a skid loader, load the skid loader, then the crew goes to the event location, unloads everything, assembles the barriers, and then once they're assembled, they can be swung in place, right? So again, very, very smart move 3-4 years ago when we bought these things, because now we don't have to create our security measures from the ground up, right? We already have a good tool at our disposal. And so we've been using them the last couple of years for the July 3rd Air Show, and we use them this summer at a few special events too. So if you were at Pride, you saw them, Blocktoberfest, you saw them, Latinx, you saw them, right? Again, working that problem of vehicle ramming attacks and trying to provide some risk mitigation for vehicles entering events. So looking to the future, as our events get bigger and better, so do the security concerns, right? So what do we need to kind of, meet the needs of our event organizers and keep people safe when they're attending these. And so we've had kind of some ongoing discussions over the last couple of months about some infrastructure improvements, things we can do to common event locations, what our needs are, right? Especially if, the workload's going to increase with more events to come. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is removable bollards. So we looked at, what areas do we commonly see street fests at, right? So Millwork District is a good example. Are there improvements, permanent improvements we can make to that area that will keep these events safe and maybe lessen the burden on staff to set up those modular barriers every time. And so a removable bollard system is an attractive option. They lock into place into a ground sleeve, right? So you set them up before the event, and when the event's done, they can be taken down. That sleeve is capped, it can be driven over, you can plow snow over it. The street resumes to, business as usual. So doing research on that. We've also reached out to MIFRM to see if we can increase our supply of those modular vehicle barricades. So right now we've got, like I said, those 4 boxes. We can shut down an intersection essentially. We can close a street at 4 spots. So our street fests that are in intersections, we can handle that. If we get a more complex footprint, we're going to need more barrier material, right? So what would it look like if we were to increase that supply? And then just talking about what our limitations are right now. So staff availability is the big one, right? Public Works has to have a crew to set up those MIFRM barriers. And then we found with a recent snow event, if there's an emergency and Public Works is, transitioning to that, then we don't have that crew, right? So that kind of, opened our eyes a little bit. Police availability, right? If the event requires law enforcement, if the organizer wants uniformed law enforcement, what options do we have for them? The costs associated with this. So again, there's an overtime cost incurred by Public Works every weekend when they're deploying these barriers. Who's paying for that, right? Especially moving forward. Competing events. So if we have 2 events on the same day, staff resources are going to get stretched pretty thin. And then one thing we see too is a volunteer shortage. So a lot of times, well, not a lot of times, but every once in a while an organizer will come in, they'll be very, very passionate, but they can't really rally the troops to the cause, right? So they don't have the volunteer infrastructure in place to kind of support that event. So that's kind of another problem that we've been looking for options on. Thank you.
So the next component that we're going to cover is some planned fee updates that multiple departments are proposing, all with the goal of making it easier for organizers to be able to host events. And again, we're particularly focused on our nonprofit event organizers with all of these fee updates that I'm going to cover. So the first I'll mention that you'll see in this slide is some planned updates to our special event fees for 2026. So historically, all applicants have paid a $50 application fee, and additionally, if they were hosting an event that involved a street closure, they would also pay a $50 fee. And that's simply because closing a street, as you've likely heard just from what's been summarized tonight, very complex process, a lot more involvement with city staff just to make sure that that is configured in a way that is most safe for everyone involved and rerouting traffic safely as well. So just based on the complexity, we do charge an additional fee for events where that is applicable. For 2026, we plan on reducing that fee for nonprofits to a $5 application fee and $5 street closure fee, again, if applicable. For-profit event organizers would maintain the current $50 fees. However, we do sometimes run into situations where for-profit event organizers host an event that they publicize as financially benefiting a nonprofit. So we do intend to have a process in place where if they can provide validation from that nonprofit that they will financially benefit from that specific event, that they could qualify for the nonprofit rates. And then the next two slides I'm going to cover are updates proposed by other departments. So I am speaking on their behalf, but they do get the credit for these proposals in consultation with the city manager. So first is proposed updates to pavilion rental fees. And so this proposal is made by our Parks and Recreation Department, who oversees all of the parks, public space rentals within the city. And so their intent is to offer a $50 discount to nonprofits who are hosting events open to the public that utilize any type of park, public space, anything that requires a reservation and involves a fee. And then the second update is through our Transportation Services Department. So they also intend to have some fee reductions for nonprofits related to meter bags. So anytime someone wants to reserve certain streets, close off certain portions of the street, block access to certain vehicle spaces on city streets that do have a parking meter, they are required to reserve that meter, which they do typically by purchasing a meter bag, which restricts access to the public to that specific parking meter. So the current fee that is charged for parking meters is $7 per day per meter. But the department has a proposal to reduce that fee for nonprofits to $1 each day per meter, and will not have any change for any for-profit event organizers. And then the other aspect that they are proposing and kind of working through the planning stages on is to implement permanent signage along our standard parade route, which is currently on Locust Street. And that by having that standard signage, it would eliminate the need for temporary no parking signs, which historically have been posted 24 hours in advance of parades. And there is certainly good intent behind that, just to make sure people have advance notice and know that they can't park in certain locations, but have run into situations where that has had negative impact on certain businesses along that parade route, to have so much advance notice to not be able to park at a location, especially when you look at a lot of our parades, they're fairly short in duration. So we're hoping that this update really strikes that right balance in making sure that people still have that advance notice by having permanent signage that is proposed to advertise that there is no parking 2 hours before a parade until 2 hours after it, with a link to our website on Detours, which gives that parade information. We always send out standard communications through various channels to let the public know when parades are occurring. So those types of communications would still go out to notify the public, but the goal for this is to really streamline the logistics of that, while at the same time making sure that businesses are still accessible in a time frame leading up to the event itself. And then other thing I'll briefly touch on just as a heads up as part of the fiscal year 2027 budget process is some improvement package requests and a CIP request that are going to be proposed through the engineering department. And so first is that improvement package request listed, and that is for funding the staff time and equipment that Joe mentioned are needed to deploy and remove the special event protection in designated downtown areas for events. So wanting to make sure that there is a dedicated funding source for that, recognizing that there's going to continue to be a need for that as part of our event season, especially as we look to streamline our event safety measures. It'll really be crucial to have a dedicated funding source for those efforts. So that will be part of the fiscal year 2027 budget process. So council will obviously, as part of that budget process, have the opportunity to have deliberation, take action upon that request at that time. This is just a heads up for you to let you know that this we feel is a key component as part of our process improvements, as well as a capital improvement program request funding for future permanent event protection in the historic Millwork District and 7th Street next to Washington Park, just areas where we typically see a frequent number of events occur. So it seems to make the most sense when we look at where to prioritize that permanent event protection, that those would be the places to look at first. Again, just going to be part of the FY27 budget process. And so then just looking ahead to next steps in terms of this process after tonight, what we plan on doing is obviously have some extensive updates to our internal process documents if the ordinance is adopted, just making sure that our application booklet, our application itself, just all are accurately updated based on the changes that we've proposed. Also have some documents I'm sorry, and that was the external facing documents. And I think one of the big things that we're most looking forward to updating as part of that is we have drafted a process flow chart that basically indicates when a special event permit is required. And we think that with this ordinance being adopted, it will really simplify and streamline that process. And so we're looking forward to updating that document, and that way we can share that publicly with event organizers, just to make it clearer for them to know when is my situation require a permit versus when it doesn't. So I think that's going to be a key document that we update along with other external facing documents. Also have some internal process documents to update, especially as we look to standardize our requirements in terms of safety and collaboration. So going to be updating a lot of documents for that. And we want to make sure all event organizers know about these updates, because we really do see that there are some key updates being made, more significant changes than past years to our events. So we do plan on issuing a formal letter to all event organizers to let them know about these changes and to call out specifically the significant changes that are being made. And along with that, we also want to give event organizers the opportunity to meet with us in case they have any specific questions or feel that a dialogue would be helpful to get feedback on what the process is going to look like in 2026 compared to 2025. So we do plan on hosting an event organizer meeting sometime in late January or early February, just to give any event organizers that opportunity to ask questions based on the communication that we're going to share with them. And then, as I mentioned, we have the improvement package requests that are planned as part of that FY27 budget process. So just thought it was good to recap, just because I know that was a lot of information that was shared overall about our process. But what is specifically being asked of council tonight is to adopt the ordinance amending special events in city code. So that's the conclusion of the presentation, but we're happy to answer any questions regarding the ordinance itself or any part of the processes that we covered.
Great, thank you very much, Adrian, everybody, for the presentation. It was very thorough, which I think was very necessary and very helpful, actually, with this particular change. I have an immediate question, then I'll open it up for everybody. But one of the things we heard a lot about was the fee that people were being charged for barricades. That was one of the things that was there. Is that what you're talking about with the $10,000 improvement package, or is that different? Because I don't think I saw that addressed in here.
So the improvement package request itself would simply cover public works time to assemble the barricades, because as it was mentioned, right now we're covering funding for that, but there's no dedicated funding source. So that improvement package request is simply for their time and the equipment that they need in order to install those barricades.
Gotcha. So our organization is still going to be charged a fee to be able to set barricades up? Because correct me if I'm wrong here, but I thought there was like a few $1,000s that people were having, that were being charged for, setting certain barricades up. Think like the Labor Day Parade as an example, up and down the street. So, yeah, Chief.
Yeah, Jeremy Jensen, Chief of Police. So the barricades themselves are what they're using to close their event on the streets. That cost has been on the organizers to do that. If you're closing a street, there has to be certain, per DOT rules, certain types of barricades to close that. In the past, you may have seen traffic cones, you may have seen little bifolds, that kind of stuff. So part of the plan is that you give it to, you're closing a street, here's the plan. It's on them to rent those. The city doesn't maintain enough of those barricades to close streets themselves. We have the vehicle mitigation side of it, but we don't have the total inventory that's needed, particularly like along a parade route.
Got it.
Close the streets.
So in this change that you're proposing, we've been able to address some of the costs that were higher than we'd like them to be. For instance, you reduce the parking meter costs and things like that, but we haven't, that's not a cost we're going to be able to take on as a city currently, or make a change to what we're requiring of them. We need the barricades to be there if we're going to close streets down. It's on the organizers to do that for the reasons you discussed. It's safety. We need to make sure that it's there, but that cost is still going to be on them.
Yes, and we looked at it as we'll take on the vehicle mitigation side of that, which is the cost. I mean, and as far as we have found, you can't rent those anywhere.
You're talking about the yellow
things, yeah, the bike rack looking things,
right?
That are out there.
Yep.
And we did have that.
Yep.
So we've taken on that cost and being able to do that. But on the offset is like, if you want to do we still need detours. We still need signs that say road closed. We still need all those things.
Okay. All right. Thank you. That's helpful information. Yeah, Ms. Farber. Go ahead.
Chief, just a quick question. I'm just curious, what are these MyFrame modular vehicle barriers cost?
So those 4 sets they're the 4 boxes that you approved back in '23 were about $130,000.
Per box or altogether?
No, for all of it.
Gotcha. So
and they come from overseas, so they take a while to get.
There you go. All right, thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Jones first, then.
Just a quick question. I can't believe that you misspoke, Adrian, but I think you might have on the park pavilions. You said it was $50 reduction. The slide said 50% reduction. Which is it?
I apologize if I misspoke. It is a 50% reduction. The slide's correct.
Either one's a step in the right direction. That's good. Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Wethel.
My question is related to which is less staff intensive as far as comparing removable bollards to the MyFrame modular vehicle barriers. Is it like an either or?
Our hope with the bollard system is we might be able to close down, let's take the millwork, for example, right? If we know we have a big festival on Saturday, maybe we can use on-duty public works staff on a Friday afternoon to deploy those, right? Because the MyFrames, once you set them up, the benefit is you can swing them in and out, right? To get vehicles out, they're really handy that way. But any kid could do that, right? We don't want to see our $130,000 barriers rolling downhill, right? So the hope is if we can get a removable bollard infrastructure in place, maybe that gets set on a Friday, right, when we actually have staff working, and then it can come down on a Monday morning and the street can resume as normal. So it's still going to take staff, right? You have to set each one in place, and they're heavy bollards. I mean, they're upwards of about 170 pounds apiece. So it's still going to take staff and equipment, but again, the hope is we can reduce that overtime burden and reduce people having to give up a day off to come in and set those up.
And so when someone, for instance, has an event in the Millwork District, and say we have these bollards present and we're able to shut down all 4 ends, who would the event be paying for that? Or is that something we offer and they are more responsible for signage?
Those are all discussions that we've had. Like if it's a nonprofit, are we going to look to take on that cost? If it's a for-profit event, are we going to ask that they chip in? We've looked at, public-private partnerships. Do we maybe make the initial investment to get the bollards and, the installation costs, and then maybe they can contract with somebody to put them in place, provided there's insurance, so if our stuff's damaged, it can get all discussions we've been having around these bollards as we try to find the best system.
So at budget time, you'll just miraculously have an answer to all of those things because you'll have sat down and figured them
I
out.
hope so.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Mr. Resnick.
Thank you. So do other cities have that permanent sign talking about, sometimes we're going to say there's no parking here? Do you know of other cities that works?
I can't speak to that specifically, but I can say that we do have that signage set up specifically regarding, I believe, is it the night market? The farmer's market. We currently have that signage. And so since that signage is already used for that type of event, we're trying to mirror that because we feel like we already have it in place. So just keeping that standard.
Has it been effective?
Don't know if anyone that. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so, it's very effective when I'm driving by and I'm going to pull into something, there's a bag over it. Okay, I'm not going to park there. But if there's a permanent sign that's always there, and I didn't know there was something going on, usually I don't know, I hate to admit this, I don't know what's going on when I see those bags being, some special event is happening and it didn't go through me, right? It went through other people. But there's nothing like a bag over the parking meter. It tells me, you know what, I can't park here. So I'm just wondering if that works. What the proposed system for you, what happens if they park there and they're not supposed to?
Sure. We have the same thing with bags. The problem with the bags is that it requires somebody by ordinance to place it 24 hours beforehand before we can enforce on it. Organizers sometimes do it, sometimes not do it. They may do it 8 hours, may do it 11 hours, may do it 25 hours. And so then we get to a point where we got vehicles parked there and we can't do anything with them. With the signage, we still deal with this at farmers market. People park there. What we try to do is get the vehicles moved before we go and start yanking vehicles out of there with a tow truck. Same thing here, but having a permanent space that's identified, or like a parade route, these kind of things, I think it's less confusing to the public because this is the route. This is the farmer's market. These are the areas, not just like, okay, all of a sudden my street's closed or this kind of thing, and what does that mean? The bag meters, people, just like the signs, may choose to ignore it, may choose to use it, but you're right. You pull up to it, you see it, and that's bagged. And I know, that we shouldn't park there. Some people just don't care and do it. The same thing with the signage, but we surmise that it'd be better for us as a community to have these locations that are set. These are it, and these are the ones and it's an education process too as we go through that. But like I said, we don't tow it until we try to contact people. And do that kind of stuff first.
So you have towed cars?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that has happened on certain events, but not a lot.
And they say that they didn't know they couldn't park there? I'm sure you hear it all, but.
Oh, we hear it all. That's exactly. Give a reason. And you can pick a reason for why somebody will say it.
Okay, thank you very much. And my second question is, usually we charge fees to cover costs. It doesn't seem like the fees that we charge now come close to covering these costs for special events. Is there any kind of estimate about how much special events cost us, the citizens of Dubuque, that is?
Sure. So if you look at, specifically for fiscal year 25, when we looked specifically at events that have been hosted, there were 83 nonprofits that hosted events. So looking at the potential fee reductions for them, typically if you look at 83 events being charged $50 per permit, that gets you around $41.50 in terms of costs. So I think it goes back to, and I'll just go back to kind of the slides that we have on our goals. It's really, when we look at goal number one, the fact that we want to support not only nonprofits, right? It's not just supporting them, but our private partners as well, who really want to create these events because we recognize that they're a huge quality of life amenity. I know that all of you, as part of your council member reports, talk about attending events. We, as city staff, as residents of our communities, attend events. I attend them and often see multiple city staff at them. So even though, yes, there is a fee and a cost that we're going to be losing out on by reducing those fees, I think when you look at the goal and the overall goal of trying to have as many of these events as possible and really trying to reduce any potential barriers to those wanting to host those events, we really think that in consultation with all city staff, we feel that it's worth that reduction, and we're really not going to be losing out on a significant financial amount in order to achieve that goal.
All right, thank you. But I guess I was asking about what it costs us right now with the police, with the public works. It sounds like it's $100,000 plus. I mean, how much do special events cost the city of Dubuque?
Yeah, it's definitely difficult to quantify because, and I'm sure everyone will agree with me, every event is different, especially because, as Corey mentioned as part of the presentation, not every event that's hosted is meant for the space that it's in, but it does vary event by event. You'll have some events that are just hosted in Washington Park. So that scope is a lot simpler than an event that's a street closure. So I think just when you look at the fact that every single one of them is different and unique, which is good because we want to see unique events, it makes it really hard to put a specific number on it. But based on the number of city staff who review it, there is I'd say a significant amount of time and effort, especially during our heavy event season, which really starts ramping up in April, starts to go through October, even have a decent number of events in November now. So there definitely is a significant amount of staff time, and that really is to make sure that events are thoroughly reviewed for compliance and safety. But at the same time, we're balancing that with our goals of wanting as many of these events to occur as possible. And so we're just trying to strike that right balance.
All right, thank you very much. And I guess I don't know why we have a rate differential between the two. $50 anymore, I'm afraid it's not a lot of money. My haircut cost me $30. I mean, all the different stuff that, we're doing for this, I just don't see why. The for-profit people have some great events too, and they have good reasons for them. And anyway, those are my ideas. I don't know that it would have changed my vote, but those are just some of the things that I've been thinking of, that we do spend a lot of great money and they do a lot of great things. I get it. So is this supposed to be tax supported and we only charge these fees so to know that they're serious, like a buck to get up to Eagle Point Park? It doesn't cover a lot of costs, but, it means they're serious about, going into the park. And is that what these fees are for then, is just to say, this is a serious event and this is, they have a little skin in the game even if it's only $50?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, I think it goes back to me reiterating our goal with trying to make events as accessible as possible. And we really did a lot of reflection about, after this past event season, about some of the barriers that we typically see for event organizers. And so fees really came up consistently as part of that discussion. And so I certainly recognize your point in recognizing that fees are certainly common for a lot of our services, and we still feel that it's necessary overall to charge a fee. But just going back to what our general goals are, we really feel like this is the right approach to make events as accessible as possible for organizers.
Well, I see your point as well. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Sprank.
Thank you. As somebody who's organized one of those lovely community events that shuts down the street, it does take a lot of work. And I can admit, I've ended up talking to, or the folks that on our team have ended up talking to all of those folks on those departments, except for the health department. I don't know why they'd be on there, but just to make sure when you're shutting down multiple intersections and you want it safe for citizens. I know there are other cities that, Mr. Resnick, that will charge you a considerable fee, or they will say you have to have additional security. The city of Cedar Rapids, for example, if you are expecting a certain number, you have to have full-time on security, where you either have to coordinate with the police department so it doesn't affect their budget. So that is possible. So I appreciate that we're trying to work with other organizations and nonprofits to make these events affordable for everybody in our community. So I'll be supporting this. I was surprised that it came up. So thank you.
And I will just add, as
the fees are not part of the ordinance. The fees are set, all of these fees that were presented are basically set by the city manager. So we're just presenting those for you just because we feel like it's important that code is just one piece of these overall process improvements, but those fees are not part of the ordinance that is being proposed for you to adopt tonight.
Mr. Jones?
Yeah, I like the direction that this is generally moving. Special events can be costly, but the reality is for public safety, it's our public, whether they're at a special event or not. So we've got 60,000 people to protect in the city of Dubuque from as many hazards as we reasonably can. If 5,000 of them are down in the Millwork District, they're still our people that we have to protect, and that's going to come with some municipal cost. The extreme events, like the fireworks, where we have to hire additional off-duty personnel, I can see where that needs to be shared by the event organizers. But it certainly makes sense to me that we absorb as much of this cost as we reasonably can to make it easy, and above all, to make sure that it's safe. Because most of these expenses are on the public safety side of the coin, and that's our responsibility wherever our citizens are at in Dubuque. If we got a large gathering of people, we'd better have the resources focused on that so that we're able to protect them for whatever happens to them while they're there. And a lot of these are about preventing things from being able to happen, like the physical barriers. I like the idea of the bollards because it's a one and done capital expense, but the installation is fairly straightforward and easy. Half-hour caper to go down and close off 4 streets with the bollards and the right equipment. It's a little longer to set up the portable equipment, and the risk of it not being there when you come back is not insignificant. That's not going to happen with the bollards, so that's a pretty good program. I have thought about for some of these larger events that maybe it would be in our interest to buy a semi full of Jersey barriers and just have them on hand for the use. The event planner might have to pay for somebody to deploy them, but they wouldn't have to rent them. That's a major expense for some of these big events. But that's just a thought for down the road as you're figuring out how to best do this. And the Jersey barriers are just a word. That's not a commitment to that particular product. But I get why they're sometimes needed. We do have to not just put up a sign to expect all vehicles to stop for that in this day and age, unfortunately. We're going to need a barrier that prevents automobile traffic from getting into the people traffic. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Ms. Hopa?
I think the really great piece of this, as I read through this item before our meeting, was that I saw a number of things that I had maybe personally reached out to the city manager and asked him if we could look at some considerations. And I'm sure my other council colleagues had done the same when they were approached by people. Just how can we troubleshoot and make things better? How can we continually improve? And so I appreciate all of the staff work that went into this, because it was a lot. Looking at very specific things about how we run events. I want to call to the attention something that might be obvious to some, but I don't think it is to everyone, that we don't expect to make money on making sure we have festivals. When we talk about those in the landscape of today that feel that municipal government should do only one thing, and it's public safety and it's taking care of your streets. This is that. And so when people say line item the budget, take things off to pay for this, find the money somewhere else. Well, this is a measure of things that make our life rich in Dubuque. And so it is an investment, things like safety protocols and equipment to make sure it's done right, but also prioritizing staff time. So upfront cost, but maybe improves our staff time costs later on. So I just think this is a really good example of how city government is not meant to run like a business. City government is work in service of the residents here in Dubuque. And you guys have gone out of your way to make sure we do this right. Thank you.
Ms. Farber?
Yes, so I just want to thank you for the update and the ordinance changes. there are things called Food Truck Fridays, there's the Millwork District, and, we're always out and about for all of these different events, all that jazz, et cetera. And sometimes it's more safe than others. And so I think this will kind of give you an opportunity for specific parameters for each event. And I think those of us that are participating in each of those events will feel better about where the cones are, where they're not, where we can park the truck, where we can't, times to get there before vehicles approach, which is a major concern. You have to get your tent up or your kiosk up or your food truck there prior to the event really beginning. And so it's very important to know in advance where those cones are going to be, or the bollards, or these new event, whatever they're called, those new barriers, if you will. So this is really just very well done and with great appreciation. So thank you very much.
All right. Okay, well, thank you all. Adrian, we're probably going to need you here in the next moment.
I was going to say, I can.
I think we've come to that point where we now need Adrian to be back in the Adrian role. Yeah. Yep.
My action item here.
So the motion here is to receive and file and waive the 3 readings. So Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
That motion passes 6-0. Originally made by Mr. Jones.
Thank you. It's been a while. I move final consideration and passage of the ordinance.
Second. Oh, sorry.
We got a motion by Jones and a second by Sprank. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Resnick.
Aye.
That motion passes 6-0. We'll let Adrian get back to a regular seat here.
I'll-
Or if you want
I
to go
can
from
just
there,
announce it
sure.
here and then I'll
Yeah,
power walk
all right,
over,
cool.
yeah. Action item number 5 is approval of updates to downtown rehabilitation and housing creation incentives guideline documents.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
move to receive and file the documents and adopt the resolution.
Second by Wethel.
Motion by Jones, second by Wethel. Mike, please.
Thank you. Economic Development Director Jill Connors is recommending City Council approval of updated guideline documents of currently available financial incentives for building redevelopment and housing creation within the greater downtown urban renewal area, with the addition of incentives for for-sale condominiums and multifamily buildings, and that existing units must have been vacant for at least 3 years to qualify for city incentives. Dating to the early 2000s, the city has implemented several programs to support downtown revitalization and housing development in the greater downtown area. The City Council has previously approved these programs and guidelines. Economic Development staff are now recommending 2 proposed additions to the Housing Creation Grant Program. First, formalizing the long-standing, but currently unwritten, practice that existing units must have been vacant for at least 3 years to qualify. Second, expanding the programs to incentivize the creation of for-sale condominiums in multifamily buildings. The second proposed addition responds to the most recent housing study and current market trends. To help diversify housing options in our downtown, walkable neighborhoods, Jill recommends expanding the program to include incentives for for-sale condominiums and multifamily buildings. Specifically, this would apply to the existing $10,000 per unit grant to for-sale units located within the greater downtown urban renewal area. The attached updated guidelines for the Downtown Housing Creation Grant Program include these modifications and require City Council approval for implementation. No new funding is required. Existing programs are funded at $750,000 a year for downtown housing creation grants, $150,000 a year for Central Avenue corridor forgivable loans, and $2,000 a year for downtown rehabilitation grants. Tax increment finance and abatement incentives are self-funded through the project-generated tax increment. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request Mayor and City Council approval.
Thank you, Mike. What discussion do we have? Mr. Resnick.
Yes, Mr. Van Milligan, why 3 years? Why vacant for 3 years? Why is that the number? Why not 2? I mean, another year of being vacant just makes the place a lot worse.
Well, it's a great question. It's a hard target to hit. What is the right target? Oh, we're going to let the Economic Development Director, Jill Connors, answer the question.
Maybe. Jill Connors, Economic Development Director. When the manager and I had this conversation, we've had this practice for a number of years, and when I brought it up probably 6 years ago, Mike asked me, well, where'd you get that idea? And anyway, I looked back, I knew that we had been operating that way, and I found documentation put together by my predecessor's predecessor, Dave Heyer, and there it was talked about having 3 years. We think that's a good target to hit. If it's been a shorter amount of time, we're not sure if they're just not able to fill the unit for any specific reason. So that's just been the long-standing practice. You know, if the council would want that to be reevaluated, we can certainly do that.
One of the things we did talk about is why have any time at all? Because wouldn't it be great to just have any unit updated and, you know, improved? But our concern about that is then we end up evicting tenants. So if you have a 5-unit building and they've been vacant for 3 years to get our incentive, nobody's going to evict a tenant and say, now I'm going to leave this place vacant for 3 years so I can get the city's money. They're going to be in such poor condition that they can't rent them. And if we were to say, well, you don't have to be vacant at all, you know, we want to get every unit updated. Well, those 5 people are going to get tossed out so that then the person can get our incentive to remodel their building. And so what happens to those 5 people? I think there could be an argument that maybe it could be 2 years, but I don't know. Then would some people evict somebody and say, oh, I can wait 2 years to get, you know, $10,000 a unit? I think that's probably a stretch that would happen. So, you know, but to have no years, I think we would potentially be doing a disservice to tenants who are able to afford those units and already live in them.
Right. Well, I appreciate that. And
Jill, do you have something else to add? Sorry, Mr. Reza.
Yeah, thank you. I also wanted to add, when we talked about whether we wanted to incentivize units that didn't have any vacancy at the time, the other concern, in addition to evictions, was the fact that, well, maybe I'm just going to let it go, you know, as a landlord, and I'll fix it up next year and get the $10,000 from the city, you know, and try to use it for deferred maintenance. So we've tried to be careful in crafting the incentive in a way that if it's vacant for 3 years, then we know that there's something up, that the landlord really needs assistance to get these back online as new inventory.
I notice, I get the point about competing interests, but if you have an apartment that you rent for $500, which is pretty low nowadays, and that's $6,000 they have coming in for the year, and they're going to make that permanently, you know, they'll lose $12,000 over 2 years to get $10,000. I don't know how smart that would be, but in the meantime, the neighbors are like, "What's going on with this? This place is a pit," you know. And so I'd ask the council members, maybe it's not the time for this discussion, but you know, blight is, you know, the more things around you that are low, you know, they are not kept up, that catches. As you know, it's very catchy if a place is going downhill, the other places around there start looking like they're going downhill as well. Just an idea, I prefer two years for someone who hasn't studied it a bit, like I know you studied it and thought about it, but it just seems to me common sense it would be, and you always have to worry about common sense remark, but it should be considered, I think, 2 years rather than 3, but that's my opinion.
Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, Mr. Spring.
I have another question, Jill. I like the idea of the for sale condominiums in a multifamily building. My concern, though, is majority of our agreements that when we give people these grants and such, is that we usually have a clause in there where they have to have so many of the units have to be Section 8. So what happens if they're selling off those units? How's that going to work?
Right. Well, when you have a Section 8 voucher, you can either put that toward your rent, or you can take that to your lender and use that to apply toward your mortgage. And I double checked with the housing department and looked on their website as well, and that's how that works. So you can still use your voucher for home ownership.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that won't affect that program.
Right.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Well, I'll return to Mr. Resnick's question that he threw out. I guess I would think, from a mathematics standpoint, I mean, listening to the arguments that both Jill and Mike made here, I kind of agree with the 3-year term because of the reasons that, and I understand your math that you put out there too, Mr. Resnick, but I guess I'm not aware, but I don't think there are that many apartments that are going to be $500 currently. I just don't think that that's a going rate for too many of the market rate or, what's that?
You think it's going to be more?
I think it's going to be more.
That even strengthens my argument.
No, because maybe I'm thinking about it wrong, but I would, then if you sat on it for 2 years, you wouldn't be coming close to what you actually are losing in money. If you just, because the amount is, it's 10,000, right? Is that what we're talking about?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess, I think first of all, the argument of 1 year or immediate, Mike made a very good point. I think that absolutely would lead to people evicting people. That's one major risk, and I think the most concerning one. But I think the 2-year mark is one where somebody could still just kind of, hold out a little bit longer. But I think 3 is, as you put it, Jill, the indicator that somebody's actually in need of our assistance of some sort. Because I think the concern you have, I think, is a legitimate one. It's a concern of people gaming the system. But I also don't think we have we had too many, we're doing this now, essentially, just in practice, right, with 3 years?
Right, that's what we have been doing. And we've had projects where they come in and, for instance, we've done a project where there were 11 units in the building, and one of them was occupied. So we incentivized 10 and not the 1. So it was up to the landlord whether they were going to redo that apartment or not, but they weren't getting the city incentive for it.
Okay. So I guess in closing, I'm happy with the 3-year mark on the ordinance as it is currently. Mr. Sprague?
And I can see that some of those projects, it could take up to 18 months before they even get approval from the state to do their funding. So, yeah, I could see this. I'm fine with the 3 years. I get it.
I agree.
All right, anything further on the discussion of the ordinance itself or anything else? Or I'm sorry, the resolution. It's not an ordinance, resolution. My apologies there. Okay. All right.
Mr. Mayor,
Yeah,
point of
please, Mr.
information. Is the 3-year, 2-year situation in this ordinance specifically, or is that something that'll be discussed later? Or is that an important part?
It is in the resolution, yeah.
It is an important part of the resolution.
Yeah, if you open the resolution, it specifically states minimum of 3 years on the fourth whereas statement.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Well, motion here is to receive and file and adopt this resolution. So thank you very much, Jill. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Resnick.
No.
That motion passes 5-1.
Action item number 6 is Ninth Amendment to the Development Agreement by and between the City of Dubuque, Iowa and GT Novelty LLC and GT Novelty Condos LLC.
Mr. Mayor,
Mr. Jones.
move to receive and file the documents and adopt the resolution.
Second by Farber.
Motion by Jones and a second by Farber. Mike, please.
Senior Counsel Barry Lindahl is recommending City Council adopt the resolution approving the Ninth Amendment to the Development Agreement with GT Novelty LLC and GT Novelty Condos LLC. I concur with the recommendation and respectfully request Mayor and City Council approval.
Thank you, Mike. Questions or discussion? Seeing none? Hearing none? All right. Well, motion here is to receive and file, adopt the resolution. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones.
Aye.
Resnick.
That motion passes 6-0.
Next are council member reports.
All right. Getting near the holidays, near the end of the year, what have we been up to?
May I have the
Ms.
honor?
Farber, yeah,
Thank you
please.
so much. So, as with the sharing of the chair here, some of the committee assignments that I have had have terminated, if you will. And for example, with the Dubuque Initiatives, I actually finished my 10-year term with them, which really actually started before my city council role. And so we had our end of the year meeting there. And then also for the sister cities, that's been 5 years on that committee as well. Then I do believe we have a legislative dinner tomorrow night, and then a following of a DMAS ECIA meeting, and that will culminate my experience here. So I wanted to thank all the committees because it's been just a pleasure and an honor to work with them, and a lot of fun results have been done. I also want to give NAMI a shout out. I was fortunate to attend their holiday gathering on the 9th of December, and it was during that horrendous cold storm, if you remember, but 100 program participants appeared. And they shared a holiday dinner, they shared bingo and other kinds of exchanges of gifts, and it was just very heartwarming to see that group together because it was really program participants of all ages plus their supporters. And it was just really amazing to see all of that. And then I also wanted to give them a shout out for the forthcoming tailgate tour with the Green Bay Packers this April. And I'm involved with that as their chair. And I just can't tell you the enthusiasm and the high energy. The Packers themselves are just thrilled to come to the Field of Dreams and offer a football alternative to baseball on the field. And so I think that's going to be one of the things that we will be looking forward to as well. But I just wanted to give them a shout out. That crew, that team has been just working tirelessly over the past few months to get this done with the Green Bay Packers. So we're looking forward to that. And then also tomorrow night, I do have another continuation of the community outreach that we're having for the Field of Dreams. And so that will be a discussion amongst about 70 people for the campus expansion. So I look forward to continuing in that role as well, as you so know. And then I just wanted to thank everybody again for their support and for allowing me to serve for the past 5 years. It's just been an honor and a privilege. And then most importantly, just want to wish everybody a happy holiday and a happy Hanukkah and a happy New Year. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Farber. Mr. Resnick.
Very quickly, I just wanted, you talk about millwork events, and the Merry Millwork event that happened last weekend was wonderful. It was cold, and so the nice woodwind carolers who were here earlier, we stood out in the cold and gave a little festive spirit to the place. But this is a happening place. People really enjoyed it. That's a great new event. I don't know how new it is. Maybe it's a couple years old. Yeah, but that's a perfect event for that area. And people are in a good mood and looking forward to have a lot of holiday spirit, goodwill towards all people, and that's what we need more of around here. So thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Resnick.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Jones.
Not much going on this last couple of weeks. We had an exciting and challenging work session last Monday where we learned more about the needs of our park system and rec programs. And the challenge is going to be figuring out how to get that bought. Tuesday the 9th, I got to attend Marie Ware's retirement gathering. Man, those are going to be some big shoes to fill. But I think we filled them pretty well with Matt. And ton of fun Friday. I went to the Prescott Soup Luncheon, and a lot of people there, a lot of people there. You walk in the door and there's 20 voices standing in the breezeway saying, "Thanks for coming, go right in here." And then it just kept getting louder and more fun. So that was pretty, got a few things ahead of us yet, not done yet. Tomorrow I've got DRA and the legislative dinner, a Travel Dubuque Executive Committee meeting. Wednesday, we've got DMATs and solid waste budget meeting. And then I think my council service about wraps up. But I'll be available if something comes up between now and January 1st. Yeah. Thank you again, everybody, it's been a pleasure. What a panel this has been.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, Mr. Spring.
Thank you. Since last time we met, I met the North End and the Point Neighborhood Associations had holiday events. And then I know I was down at the Mary Millwork Market on the 6th. A couple churches in my neighborhood did cookie walks, bought way more cookies than I needed. We had that, of course, that wonderful work session that Mr. Jones mentioned. I know this last Friday I was at Senior, and for about 2.5-ish hours talked with kids in the IJAG classes about possible future things, and they gave me some good ideas about things they'd like to see us doing in the future. So I'll be talking about that at some point. And yeah, just busy weekend as always. Volunteered at a food giveaway. A little cold, but we all made it through, and yeah, just be happy to be here. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, Ms. Webb.
So we kicked off the weekend with the Dubuque Academy of Ballet's Nutcracker performances, and they are all 5 sold out. So we've got 3 more performances next weekend. Excited for that. I serve as part of my council role on the Dubuque County Early Childhood group and have enjoyed that work. As part of restructuring through the state government, and depending on what our elected officials at the state level decide, we potentially are moving those early childhood organizations into districts similar to the brain health and substance use management districts. For District 7, we will be the same district. And so I have joined an ad hoc committee with 13 other people in District 7 region to try and decide and be ready to go if our state legislature ends up deciding that we are dividing into districts versus having individual county level early childhood organizations to assist in allocation of resources and recommendations to the state. So I look forward to that work, and I'm really grateful that I get to be part of it. Thanks.
Thank you for that. Well, the one thing I say before we move off into closed session here, one thing I want to let everybody know about was just a really interesting and just a great opportunity, a great visit that we were able to have here in the city of Dubuque. So several staff members, I know Corey was involved with this, some of the arrangements, but mostly community members getting together to invite members of the Iowa tribe who live on a reservation, many of whom live on a reservation somewhere between Kansas and Nebraska. And obviously the namesake for the state of Iowa. And coming here to explore some of the areas of land that we have in this area, to see some of their ancestral home and talk about the possibility of being able to come here and visit maybe more often. It was actually a great visit to have, very interesting. A couple of members that I was able to have lunch with were actually members of the governing council for the tribe. Which has members all over the world, but the council itself meets there at the reservation. And so got to trade some notes on election year politics, which was very interesting. But more interesting, I think, is the opportunities that this presents for the city of Dubuque and the Dubuque area and the region. And I just want to thank everybody for putting that together, because I think it's a great start for a much longer conversation on how we can welcome people to our region here, to be able to enjoy the land that we get to enjoy, that their ancestors enjoyed for generations and generations. So it'll be exciting to see that move forward. Aside from that, just want to wish everyone happy holidays, happy new year, and thanks to everyone for serving on this council. It has been an absolute pleasure working with you. And we're not done. We have a closed session, so I'll entertain a motion, please.
Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Jones.
I move the city council go into closed session in accordance with chapter 21.5 of the Code of Iowa to discuss pending litigation and potential purchase or sale of real estate.
Second by Wethel.
Motion by Jones, second by Wethel. For the record, the attorney the city council will consult with on the issues to be discussed in closed session is City Attorney Karenna Brumwell. Adrian, would you call the roll, please?
Sprank.
Aye.
Kavanaugh.
Aye.
Farber.
Aye.
Wethel.
Aye.
Jones. Resnick.
Aye.
That motion passes 6-0. We are in closed session.